you see the gingerbread man?
The dying
They're bleeding. They have internal bleeding.
Okay, Cindy did those. I was like, don't stick those on there, but she was like, boom, they were gonna be on there, and that was gonna be it. She was proud of them, so.
I don't think he's, no.
Okay, Mr. Mosley, you have to send that to me, because we forgot to take a picture, and the fact that they put the mayor's name on it is great. At least the sign is nice and professional. It's fantastic. I'm putting it on my Facebook page. So, I guess we didn't win?
I don't see a blue ribbon.
I don't see a blue ribbon on that.
They were handing out tickets and you could vote by putting a ticket next to the house.
Gotcha. You're putting that in ours, right? So we did get one or no? Okay. As long as we got one, that's all that matters.
Had to have a driver's license to vote.
Oh my goodness.
So was there a podium included in the kit?
No, there was no podium. No, but I did buy one while I was there for my dad. So this weekend, my mom, my dad, and I are gonna go. We bought a smaller one, and so I'm gonna hit it again. But I'll make it. My mom makes frosting because that's no bueno. Thank you for recording for me. I'm sorry. I'll wait till you see the. Okay, yeah. Somebody give Mr. Mosley back his phone. Do you have my cell phone number?
No.
Okay. Here, I'll share my phone with you, and then you'll send me that.
Okay, really quickly, y'all received a copy of the proposed budget. This is what we think it would look like if we were able to get it very quickly and simply from OpenGov. This is just a draft. The numbers aren't accurate. I only gave you a part of the budget so you could get the general feel. We have another thing that deals with the workforce element, and we would incorporate those or in some way or the other. This is just a draft format. The biggest difference, in my opinion, is just the overall way it looks. And then currently it doesn't show the dollar change or percentage change, but we think that's something that can be incorporated. What we'd like to do next time is move to this, and the amount of headaches and stress and opportunity for human error goes way down. So it's a much more efficient way of handling things.
Can you increase the font?
I have to work on this. Yes, I'm planning on doing that.
If we can increase the font a little bit.
There might be a way that we can flip it to landscape.
That would be good too.
Yeah.
But to get it any bigger right now, we have to eliminate columns and data. And so that
Take a picture then send it in.
there's a trade-off there. But we may be able to get it landscape so that
Instead
it,
of portrait, yeah. Yes, I couldn't do it because the pages were off of the printing, and I didn't have time to play much.
and we were spending too much time working on the formatting of the actual budget, which is surprisingly more time consuming than you may think. And then every change requires that to be exported, re-imported into the Excel document, reformatted, and there's a bunch of additional steps. Really quickly, when I also handed out the sort of the additional funds packet. We'll just go through these really quickly. The police and fire fund summary page. Also, the page numbers are wrong here, but don't worry about that. It'll be right in the correct book. You're not missing a page. They're just wrong because we have to manually type the page numbers in, almost like I'm selling the other version. So this is the police and fire fund. The half-cent sales tax enters into this and then is transferred to the police and fire departments at 50% and shown as a revenue in their departments. And if anyone has any questions, just speak up because I'm just going to roll through them. The court automation fund, we're not appropriating additional monies. That's a fund that court gets. We have the FEMA grant fund summary. Now we've got a story. Hang on.
And I put there the beginning of the year fund balance for each fund, and at the end of the year, what is the projected fund balance.
For that, yes. And then you'll see it in the actual grant funds, sort of project by project analysis. So the FEMA grant, I left those papers on my desk. Let me grant it and I can give you specific numbers.
He said, let me grant it.
And did he say
Grant
that?
it, yeah.
I thought he said that, but I was like, I probably misheard.
Yeah, that's been on it for like years, but they never really like.
He's learning from me.
Do you?
Could you share it with me, please? Because I want to.
Assuming it's.
Oh, I've got it.
Oh, you do?
My money for us.
it's in my stack. So the FEMA project was this was the drainage project. It goes behind the Gables, Windsor's Homes, Garden Oaks. Y'all may recall either in 16 and 15, there was a big flooding in that area. The city applied for a grant in 2017 that was approved retroactively in 2019. It was approved with a start date of 2017. We had 3 years to get it completed starting in 2017. That project went through engineering. We had to deal with the railroad. When we bid it out, it came in at $1.5 million over budget. One of the problems we had with the timeline is when we got the grant in 2019, they assured us you had 3 years to get it completed, but there's 2 one-year optional that shouldn't be a problem since we were being granted the grant 2 years after the start date. However, what they didn't inform us is from the period of time, a few months out from the application period, like the expiration, until they approved the next year, you weren't allowed to do any work, or that work that you were doing would not be reimbursed. So it was a 75% grant, $4 million project. We had $1 million of our money, and then $3 million in grant funds. Long story short, we didn't hit the grant engineering. The project came in over budget by about $1.5 million. There wasn't time to go back and re-engineer the project differently, and so we let it lapse and are currently reapplying for that grant. The problem is the project is estimated at about $6.5 million right now. The reality is we haven't had problems with that drainage during even more significant rain ever since Public Works started maintaining and clearing out brush, making sure that drainage system was there. Y'all may recall there was actually a footbridge that had collapsed at one point and was blocking the water. It remains to be seen whether or not we have that same problem, because it hasn't flooded in 6 or 7 years. If we reapply, we have to appropriate basically another $1 million, roughly, another $700,000 to get that project going. Another thing that the Arkansas ADEQ, I think, is who it is. Ever since the restructuring at the state, I can't keep up with those departments. But ADEQ said, and FEMA is who we were working with. ADEQ said, and FEMA said that the idea that you can do the engineering and construction in one grant period is not, so they don't even approve those grants, so they don't know why it was approved all as one. What they typically do is approve engineering on one hand and then construction on another. So 2 separate projects, 2 separate grant applications. We now have the project engineered, so that's a benefit. And really I'm coming to y'all right now to figure out what we do. If we leave nothing here and just wait and see if that grant comes back in the positive, and we think we're optimistic that it will, then we can come back to the council and ask for more money at that time. But at this point, and this was applied for well before, 2 years before I was in this office. So anyways, I'll open the floor for discussion on this particular.
Did we have money previously allocated towards the previous grant?
Yes, so we have, you can see at the bottom, the balance currently is $980,000.
So you're thinking it's possibly not even necessary at this point?
It's one of those crystal ball things. We have had more significant rain events since then. It's hard to tell, there was, during this flood event actually, I remember living on that side of town and going to Walmart. And Walmart area had zero rain, while the other side of town was flooding.
Yeah.
So I don't have the information, nor do we have the tools to gather the information to determine whether the rain events that we've had since then, since we've started mitigation measures, has risen to that intensity in that short a period of time in this area. We just don't have a way to collect that data.
Yeah. that was a very weird storm. Because my house was the exact same way, nothing, but it was hovering over that one spot for 3+ hours.
It was a bad
lived
flood,
there.
though.
It was, yeah.
Those
I lived there.
apartments were,
I had
that
to
was,
go move
that
my
was
vehicle to the
pitiful.
other end of the complex.
Yeah,
And then
and
Watch it come up to my first step, the top step, and then start
So
to
since
recede.
then, Public Works has been working to clear that
we
all out.
do it periodically. So they've got it scheduled for the beginning of the year to go in, and that includes clearing brush, removing tree limbs and things that have fallen and are in there that we think that during a heavy rain event would pick that up and carry it down to the culverts that are there and effectively block those. So a part of me is inclined to say we don't have the same problem. The problem is we just don't know that. We don't know that for certain. And if it does flood again, we will have it got into several homes, numerous apartments, townhomes, and the like back there. And so, yes, sir?
So what would our amount we'd have to put up?
I was looking for the numbers, I suspect it's here. I wanna say about another 700,000, because the project was currently 4 million, and then the, estimate is, 6.5, I wanna say, so whatever that, whatever 25% of 6.5 million, minus what we've already put in.
1.7.
Yeah, we'd need about 600,000, 650,000. And that's if we get the, if we get awarded the grant. Another option, this doesn't have to be decided now, it's free to apply for the grant and to proceed with that. We've already given them notice, we've given the feds notice that we are going to be applying for the grant, and they have authorized us. So they've reviewed our application, they've authorized us to apply for the grant. I love those things where you need authorization to apply for something, or authorization to submit something.
So if it is approved, you could just come back later to the council and ask for appropriation of the additional funds.
Correct, and that's why I'm saying it doesn't have to be decided tonight.
Or if we approve it, the money's earmarked, and if it gets disapproved,
Correct.
it's I kinda like getting it extra little bit later than, oh, we gotta appropriate more money that we may have already decided that, you know, if we have a lot of needs coming up.
Yeah.
So at least it's earmarked away, and then that gives us an option to come in, again, whether we wanna do it or not, and then if we say yes, the money's already there. If we say no, then because we have another higher priority project, we've got a significant amount of funds to put towards that project.
Correct.
So what was the existing, got my iPad, what was their existing balance in the?
It's on page, of this packet, it's on page 65 at the bottom, 980,000.
No, in the general.
General fund, I think.
The general fund.
That's the 10 million.
The general fund, as of the end of October, had 13,736,000.
So if we wait to do it later, we can use this if we need it for other things, and it won't be tied up in case it's not approved.
The money that's currently in the FEMA grant fund is in the grant fund and doesn't show in the general fund number.
Each
Well, I
fund
think what
has-
RJ says makes a lot of sense. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yes, it makes it. Just I wanted to say that each fund has their own balance. It's independent.
Right.
So I have two folks saying maybe to go ahead and add that money, transfer that money from the general fund into the grant fund and to continue applying for that project.
Makes sense to me. We'll have it. And if they say no, then we can figure out what to do, we can put it back.
I think this does merit a discussion later on, if we are approved, of, okay,
Oh, easy, yeah.
what do we want to do? But, yeah, I mean, it's still our money, we're just moving it around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not going anywhere.
Now, will these funds be locked in for the duration of this grant
The
application?
council can rotate it out through a, budget resolution.
But it doesn't have to, what I mean is it doesn't have to stay in a fund earmarked for this project during the application process.
No, it is not required during the application process that we have the money already appropriated. In fact, during the application process, the first time, it took 2 years to find, I think we applied in 16 for the, 16 for the 17 grant, got approved in 19.
Wow.
I remember we had to like approve it like that night at one of your first meetings as mayor.
It was
Because
in
there's
2020, there is
there's
a
a
physical
timeline to
wire
it.
transfer here.
Yeah.
Yes, for 1 million. So this money comes from 2020.
Yeah, so it was right there at the start. Now, the question that I have is, if we were sitting here today, based on the history that we know, and we didn't have any grant applications or we hadn't started that, but I came to you and told you that that there was this grant we could apply for that would solve, or probably solve that drainage problem, and was asking for, what, $1.7 million. Is that the use that the council would determine for that money? Is kind of how I see it, right? So I think there's a new decision point,
Right.
Also, and that decision can be to proceed. That would be the safest bet to ensure that flooding doesn't occur back there again.
If we didn't do anything and it flooded again, it would be a disaster. Because like you said, it's a crystal ball situation. We just don't know. I would rather have the money allocated just in case. And then if we don't get the grant, we're gonna have another conversation about the flooding issue if it does happen again.
What's happening at the Dayspring Church? I know there's a lot of dirt work going, and it seems to have
Mini
stopped.
storage.
Really? That's awful use of that property.
They're going up
It's the
everywhere.
county.
Well, I know. I mean,
Oh, it is the
Oh,
well,
county.
you can make a lot of money.
So
don't get me wrong.
let's do, I guess, an informal show of hands. I'm hearing two things. One, let's wait and hold off and not appropriate money, and then those wanting to appropriate. If you're wanting to appropriate the additional funds in the 2024 budget, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we'll include it in the budget.
How much you are talking about?
I'll have to grab that number. It's in one of my papers somewhere, right in front of me, probably.
When you say 25% of the total budget for,
Yeah, I'll give you that number.
okay. So that
Now-
will be around,
Is that gonna affect our ability to do, that's a lot of money. And of course, I think we have a new decision point, like you mentioned, Mayor, should we do it, and we'll decide that when we get there. But is that $750,000 going to prevent us from doing any other projects this coming
What
year?
is the opportunity cost, or what?
Yeah, I mean, we've got Club Manor and some roundabouts possibly, and I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure projects that. And
There are.
So.
I don't, to answer your question directly, I don't have $10 million worth of proposals to give you. So there's no proposal that we have or have heard that would be directly nixed by this amount of money. But this is also the meeting where other folk, where the council is kind of, so someone may have $10 million worth of projects that are very convincing. I don't have $10 million worth of projects.
Do we know where we're gonna end up as far as the adjustment to fund balance? It's gonna be positive, I think, right? Because we didn't do a lot of stuff.
yeah, but it still is negative, but not for much. I don't have the final number yet, but as of, I already have the numbers as of November. We are almost in zero here, so we will be a little negative on, not the expected negative that we had at the beginning.
We
for
have,
the general
Oh,
fund.
so basically break even.
Break
well,
even. Mhm.
I
I thought it was gonna be I thought I saw a positive number.
There's negative, it's down 1.7 mil is the adjustment to fund balance. Now, we had a few small changes.
I think he's talking for
I'm
2023.
talking about for 2023, where are we going to end up?
Oh,
Not
you're
budgeted, but where we're actually
I
ending
am in
up.
46,000. We are in 46,000 as of October. So that's why I don't have the right number now. But
Okay.
we'll be going to be negative, not as much as we were expecting. That's
Yeah.
it. But I don't have
It definitely will not be the
3 million.
the 3.6 million. 1.3 million of that is the Gateway Park that's rolling over.
Right.
Also, one of the things I think we need to get back to paying more attention to is not just the fund balance, but the sort of unencumbered funds. So when we're encumbering money, which we're doing now in a different way than we used to. It used to be that if we entered into a contract for let's say, White Oak Crossing Roundabout. Once we entered into that contract, that money was encumbered, but it wasn't necessarily entered into the accounting software on an ongoing basis until year's end. It was up to whoever's project it was in the finance department to remember that money had to carry over and manually do it. So some years that would get missed. What we're now doing is rolling all those things onto a PO that we ordinarily wouldn't need to. A PO encumbers the money, so does the contract. But by virtue of doing it on the PO in OpenGov, it carries over. So when you start talking about millions of dollars of projects that are underway, or that the money has been authorized for, sometimes just looking at the fund balance doesn't paint that whole picture. So. But so it looks like we'll go ahead and add that in to the grant or the FEMA grant fund. We'll have to come back to the city council for approval of that grant if we are granted the grant. The next page is the Fire 833 fund balance. What we do in a lot of years is just appropriate the entire balance for the fire department to use in accordance with the restrictions that are placed on those funds. The following page is the grant fund summary. And the first project is the Club Manor project, which by the way is, we've awarded that, and they are waiting until the new year to get started.
Awesome.
So no appropriations there. Club Manor Corridor, here's another project. This is the project that we received the $1.1 million grant. The total project cost is currently at 30% estimated to be $2.3 million. That would mean that if we're going to proceed with this, then we would transfer $1.2 million roughly from the street fund into this project. The 1.1 million is less than 50%. Glad to have it. Would have preferred 80%, but we can open the floor for discussion on this. Also, interestingly, we have until I want to say August of next year to have that money committed for the bond or for the grant. They still haven't given us our contract number, which means we can't even submit the project to RDOT at the 30% plan approval rate. The likelihood that this money gets spent next year at all is slim to none. That said, it makes sense to obligate that money and get the grant sort of on the books there. Any heartburn to taking 1.2 million from the street fund to finish out this project?
The actual fund is 5 million, and minus the 1 million will be like in 4 million approx.
I think this is probably one of the more significant projects for our city going forward. I just think it's going to be a big economic revitalization for that corridor.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The question, and here's really in my mind what the question is. The question is, do we use one of our slots that we could apply for a different grant to apply for the difference here? Some of this is one of those grants that we could apply for another grant to get to sort of make up some of the difference. It couldn't go above the 80%. We'd still be on the hook for 20%. But I think that's foolish. I think that we could apply for something like the Club Manor roundabout right there and score 80% of that, which is a much bigger chunk of change than if we were to use a second grant. Because a lot of these grant applications, you can only submit so many grants. Through MetroPlan, we can only submit one contracting grant. And to use that just to make up a much smaller amount of money is not the most fruitful way of doing that, in my opinion.
Well, we definitely need to get something going on the Club Manor Votive roundabout.
And I think by virtue of, so once this is kind of approved, and it is approved through the state, it's sort of now that Club Manor roundabout scores very highly relative to how it scored before this, because now we have part of the regional greenway coming through. It's a risky intersection located in an area we're making more pedestrian friendly. It ticks a lot more boxes and raises the likelihood of that grant being approved simply by virtue of this grant being approved, even though that project isn't constructed. So my recommendation would be to just keep that in there. It's 1.2. The street fund is still very healthy, and this is probably the premier street project that we have going on, and probably will in 5 years.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree too.
I don't have the heartburn.
Anyone else?
Already in there, or is that coming from?
No. So there would be an operating transfer that didn't show up currently.
So it's not gonna be above.
Correct. So that would be 1.2 million, 1.215 million operating transfer out of the operating department, operating of streets into this fund. The next page, we have the all-inclusive park there, just to keep track of things. One of the great things about separating these out is it gives us a cue, an idea, a reminder when we're needing to or haven't received reimbursement yet. So this is here, but no new appropriations for the all-inclusive playground. The White Oak Crossing roundabout, basically all you're seeing here is the anticipated grants and community partnerships, which is North Little Rock share, being transferred over because we didn't receive those in the revenue column, and then no new appropriations for this year. Fun fact, if anyone's wondering why we had a groundbreaking ceremony but no construction on that project, it is because the Entergy power lines had not been relocated. This was drastically different than the Crystal Hill project in that we paid for and scheduled them to come out. They were supposed to come out like 2 days after the tornado hit. And so while I was keeping up adamantly, as I now do with all projects on utility relocation, the engineers thought it had been relocated because it was paid for and scheduled. In Entergy's defense, they were doing a lot of things dealing with the tornado at that time, and so it just got bumped. They have been out there this last week relocating, and in fact, it might be done by now. I haven't been out there and checked. And then as soon as those are relocated in the next week or two, we expect Redstone to be out there and begin construction.
Everybody's got some sort of crud.
Losing my voice all of a sudden. I've been drinking water.
Drinking. I need something stronger.
We have the Crystal Hill Road. This is just what we're anticipating using for closeout as last monies come in, and then for some touch-up stuff. No new revenues or appropriations anticipated. fire department's FEMA grant, is below that. Next page is the bulletproof vest grant. We keep those things pretty much to zero. So that pretty much concludes these, special sheets, and we can go ahead and open the floor for really the beginnings of, dialogue on the budget presentations that you've heard. I wrote down a few different items that came up over the last, during the budget so far, if we want to talk about those, or if anyone just wants to jump in and talk.
I have a quick question. So the traffic light at Montpelier and Audubon, would that not be one of these special projects?
No, that is, budgeted, so, and just that, we're reappropriating that money because we weren't able to obligate it
Right.
for construction, but no, that doesn't hit those special projects that get rolled over into this, project fund, it's just a capital, purchase.
Okay.
Because it was supposed to be much simpler than it was.
Apparently there was a really bad wreck this week, so I've heard, I've had some people talking about that.
That is not uncommon. We've submitted those plans to, RDOT for several months, not the plans, the warrant study, the signal warrant study. So y'all may recall, of course, Maumelle Boulevard's a state highway. To do anything on it, we need state approval. A number of years ago, there was a warrant study, and the city apparently had permission to put up traffic signals. It was my assumption that prior approval would authorize us to put up, traffic signals. Boy, was I wrong. We needed to conduct a new signal warrant study, which should have made it even more warranted in that location. And so we hired the engineers that did the warrant study. It's clear and convincing, according to our study, that it does warrant a traffic signal there. And we've submitted that to them, and they've had it for months now. Once they approve that and say, okay, we agree, signal is warranted, then we have to do a signal design and submit that back to them for approval. And once approved, we can then bid and quote and purchase the actual equipment.
Mr. Mayor, you have any, just a ballpark idea when all that would be done?
No, sir, I don't know if RDOT will give me approval tomorrow or August. They just, they work at their own pace, and it seems like the more you ask,
The slower they are.
it feels that way. I don't think they actually, I have no reason to suspect RDOT, for the record, is in any way, shape, or form delaying things like that. But no clue.
Okay.
I joke that with the Club Manor sidewalk to Lake Willistine, they told us we had 5 months to have that contractually obligated. It took them like 7 months to review our 30% plans, and it was 4 pages. And then after that, we had to submit 60% plans, which took months. Then 90% plans, and it took them so long to respond, we just submitted 100% plans and requested authorization to bid, which was a big no-no, but it got everyone in a tizzy to review those 4% plans. Those 4 pages plans, not 4% plans. I want to mention street overlays. We talked about that a little bit. We currently put $400,000 a year in overlays. I think a increase in that number is sufficient, is fine. At the very least, these days, 500,000 is buying about what 400,000 did 2 years ago in terms of street materials, asphalt, and the like. So I think to even maintain the current level takes more money.
Yeah, I had written down, whenever we discussed it, that you were increasing it to 500.
I brought that up and said it wouldn't be a bad idea, but I didn't get any feedback, so we didn't make that change.
I'm all in favor of that. That's the most visible thing we can do for the residents. Yeah.
Looking at page 60.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any objections to adding that to,
500?
increasing it to 500 or higher?
What do you want to increase it to?
From 400 to 500.
Pardon?
But is there, do you want more? Is that
Well,
what-
you got
is that what you're
400
asking?
for
Yeah.
overlays, are you asking for more?
So the thing is, if you look at, the street department, really the adjustment to fund balance, overall, the general fund, or the street fund continues to increase. We have revenues projected up at 13.5% and expenses projected down at 5.1, which means relative to at least last year's budget, which is pretty consistent with the prior years, we're not even spending, we haven't asked as much. I think we could increase it even more.
50?
I think you could increase it to, so if you think about it, we could increase it to 600, 700,000 for a year or two. The street fund is still very healthy, and there's nothing that says that we can't ever reduce that number down if it turns out that we're starting to see a different trend there. Because really, what we're talking about is $100,000 this year, or 200,000 or 300,000 in overlays. I would rather make improvements to bad roads than just kind of sit on money that's just sitting there in the bank. To a certain extent, we want a decent, healthy street fund, but our total street fund expenditures are annually $3 million, right? We're asking for $3,060,000, and we're sitting on effectively 2 years worth of we're sitting on over $5 million in that fund. Right, and so we have ordinance requirements that say that we need to have 20% for the general fund. Someone do the math. We're at like 180% in the street fund. We don't want to just blow that. The benefit then is when we do street corridor improvements like Club Manor, we've got the money there. We're not going for bonds. It's very healthy. But I think you can increase it several $100,000 at least for a year or two, and see if we can't do some catching up on roads.
Go for it.
I like it.
Ever since we caught the bond, not the bond, we hadn't transferred some money over and made that big transfer in the street fund. It's just been sitting there for all those years. We've never spent it down, like you're saying.
So what if we increased it to next year to 800,000, with the understanding that next budget year we'll come back, we'll look at how the budget is, and determine whether we want to continue that on an annual basis or increase it or decrease it.
So we're gonna double overlays, basically.
Is there any heartburn to that?
No.
Now, can that be used for any other like trails, or is that something else? Would that go in a
Well,
different category?
so it would be budgeted in the as a capital improvement. So can it be used for those things? It can be used for anything that's capital, really. But it is budgeted and intended to be used for overlays. We have like a path line item.
I didn't mean to jump ahead, so please.
Like the path improvements we currently have as 100,000, which we currently use all of that money in overlays, milling, for paths. And so one of the things I was going to bring up, and it may make sense, is we have the master bike and ped plan. A lot of those, but not all of those, can be street fund projects. When you look at some of the phase 1 stuff, there's some really low hanging fruit in terms of the sort of phasing and things that can make improvements. At this point, I haven't gone out and priced some of those things, but I was just looking at their phase 1 and grabbing a few things. I can't stress how awesome the Arnold Palmer buffered lanes would be. I know Councilmember Mosley, you were a little bit concerned about that, and actually it accomplishes exactly what you want. So what a buffered lane is think of a bike lane, and Arnold Palmer has a lot of people that walk in those bike lanes, right? So imagine taking those bike lanes and making them wider so there's more room to move around, and then rather than just have a white painted line, you're putting down it's not a curb, it's a little thing like that that creates a physical barrier, not, I mean, you can run over, it's like hopping a little curb, and it actually makes it so that those walking up and down Arnold Palmer or riding their bikes have more room, have the safety and the feeling of safety of having something so that those cars aren't riding right up on them. That stuff is relatively cheap. When you look at a few different areas, the Woodland Side Path, I'm not sure if anyone's ever been out here to Woodland, where the Woodland Park is. There's like a trail system in the middle that connects to some of the neighborhoods, and it just stops, like not far from Edgewood here. So you'll see kids walking in the side path and then going in the street to walk to school or to the community center. And then on the other end of Woodland is leading right down to the soccer fields and football fields, and like, so it's the weirdest side path. I think by connecting those, it's why it's on phase one. Finishing those out, you connect the soccer fields to downtown and the park, or not downtown, but the Civic Center, I think is what we're calling this. You have things like adding bike lanes to Club Manor, the Millwood Circle side path that can be extended and really connect a lot of neighborhoods right there. These are low-hanging fruits that basically I'd like to just ask for money to begin doing those sort of things. I don't have a quote for it though, right? And so in brainstorming, I was like, well, what if we just increase that path number, or just set aside certain number, an amount to begin that process? Some of these are things like that you're not going to hire an engineer and qualify as a big project. This isn't something that we'd necessarily hire like one person to do it all. It just is, some of the stuff can be done in-house, so getting quotes on it is quite a big deal. Thoughts, feedback?
We didn't do a master bike and ped plan to just put it on a shelf and not do anything about it. That 1.2 million for Club Manor, is that also coming out of streets?
Yes.
We're gonna, okay.
So then that brings it to like 3.8 with then
You know, I think people
the
live
adjustment.
here just for those types of amenities, and they need to be kept up. They need to be, they need to stay beautiful. They need to stay in good repair. And, you know, people are allowing their kids to walk back and forth to school. They need to know they're safe. So, you know, Maumelle is a very safe community, and I would like to see our bike paths stay. I mean, that's a big draw. When we moved here, it was amazing to me that we even had something like that. And I think the upkeep on it and maintenance of it needs to be a priority.
Do we have any idea of money? Because I like it in theory, but I'm a numbers guy. Just
the answer is
I'm not comfortable.
More money than we have, right? So if the goal was to say I'm going to take this book and do everything in it, which by the way, there's some things in there that I wouldn't advocate for. In fact, I'd kind of say I don't think that's a good idea, or not right now, or it doesn't fix certain things, or it doesn't take into consideration other things. But if we were to just say, build this whole thing, tens of millions of dollars. So the real question is, it might be better to think about it in terms that because there's none of the things kind of in phase one that I'm looking at are massive projects. I don't think the Edgewood, down, narrow with a side path, which was one of the things they sold. I don't think that's a just general budget, just handle sort of thing. I think there's some issues there, so I pull that out. The Club Manor corridor is ongoing, and so we don't need to set aside funds for that. Short of that, now what we're talking about is maybe something more like we deal with overlays, which is you tell us how much money we have to start building out the system. We grab the projects and different priorities kind of from that, and then start applying that. Because there's dozens of different projects, some as simple as like spray paint, painting a sharrow on a street. and others as complex as maybe looking at in terms of a project, whether it's changing out the boardwalk or these bigger sort of issues. So really what the question is if this is kind of the direction that we want to go, tell me what amount of money I have or we have, and you can kind of fit those things in, because which is how we handle overlays, right? It's not like we come each year and say these are the roads we want to overlay, and therefore it's going to cost this amount. We say this is the amount of money you have, because no amount of money we could afford out of the street fund is going to build half of the system that we're kind of ideally hoping for.
What if we put a certain amount in there, and then at some point, spring, summer, you come back with a list of, I've thought about it, here's what the projects I'd like to finish up towards the end of the year, and we reappropriate additional funds if we choose to.
So you're saying just like something that gives me a
starting point.
For example, if y'all said we had $100,000, it changes the projects that I look at. If you said we can afford $1 million and come, look at $1 million, here you go. Oh, and by the way, let us know what those are. Those totally change the scope of the projects that you're including, whether they're things that are done in-house or whether they're things that are, you're hiring an engineer for different things. Maybe this particular trail would be cheap, except it's gonna need an engineered retaining wall. So it's just it's such a broad category with so much to do. It's kind of like, well, you got a dirty house, what room are you gonna, you got 2 hours, start working on it or something. That's not a good example at all.
Well, you've got
Yes, sir?
100,000 already.
So, and the way we that 100,000 currently is just maintenance there. And so I wouldn't go into, I don't think it's prudent to go in and say, we want to use the maintenance money for improvements. Or we'd have less maintenance, which would sort of set everything back a year. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I know the fire chief likes to kind of prepare us for the future, saying we're gonna need a fire station. He's never said what one would cost. Do we know, have any ballpark idea what he's talking about?
A fire station? He's supposed to be looking at those. He could tell you. I mean, he just built one. When he was part of North Little Rock as their assistant fire chief, they just built the one that he said that he would like to build here in Maumelle, and he wants to take people out. I don't know what that is.
All I'm worried about.
4.5 million was the last one?
Was you're asking what the Station 2 was cost? I don't know. To be fair, I wasn't mayor.
Regardless, it was so long ago,
That number sounds about right.
Number's
It was
wrong
real
on.
cheap.
And the prices are
Yeah.
low.
I just worry a little bit about if at some point we say, oh, we need a fire station and we're gonna try to do a bond issue, and maybe the residents aren't in the mood to do another bond issue, because the last one squeaked by on something we really had to have, so.
Yeah. Well, we probably wouldn't be using street funds for that, though.
You say
We wouldn't be using street funds for the fire station.
okay, so we're just talking about street funds here on the.
Well, and everything that kind of looked like in phase 1, so if it is in the right of way, the existing right of way of roadways, then it can be street projects.
Okay.
If it's kind of going off through a park or cutting between different areas that are not in your traditional roadways, then you can't use street funds. Easiest way to think about it is a sidewalk or a side path are usually right there in the right of way, and so that can be street funds. If you're talking about a trail that meanders between a few homes down a green space and then connects to a street, that would be general fund money. So tell me what to do. What do you?
Well, are you asking for street fund?
Yeah, I'm asking for
Because you
additional.
referenced one that goes out through the middle of the woods, though, in your example.
Which one?
Just now.
The one where the parks, where it meets up in the middle of the woods.
No, well, no. So that's right alongside of Woodland there. So that, you know that park on Woodland. It just connects. So if you.
I was thinking over here on Millwood. Sorry,
No,
too many woods.
No, I didn't mention the Millwood for that reason. I don't.
Okay.
But I'm not specifically saying these are it. I was just looking at the types of projects that if I had I don't even know what number to say, truth be told, because I know some of them require some engineering. You may have rights-of-way access, or trying to really delve into that with the city engineer as a start. I think we can make progress with a couple $100,000. I think we can make significant progress. I wouldn't, if you guys gave me $3 million, I'd say no, not right now. We're not ready for, I don't, nor do I think we can afford it. I'm just kidding. Anything really more than $1 million, I'd say, not now. We need to do that, so.
So you said you think you could get a good start with 200,000.
I think we could use 200,000 a year for forever in upgrades and.
Now, if the Greenway starts developing, any hope of more grants coming down? Again, crystal ball.
One of the things this does give us is, the TAP grants, which are, that's the grant we use for Edgewood sidewalks, they're transportation alternatives, so it's aimed at pedestrian primarily. With something like this, we do much better, and it's more focused. So in the past, it'd be like, hey, you guys can apply for a TAP grant, and I would go to Jack Stowe or someone else and be like, hey, what do we need to build in terms of trails? What are we hearing from people, or what are the connectivity issues? Where do we want to focus? I think we apply for TAP grants every year, and we now have directions as to how to prioritize those. And so I think we continue to apply for those on a routine and regular basis, and I think we score a lot better, because you can use a lot of the narrative there. You're targeting regional foot and bike traffic as opposed to local, and it just, so yes. I don't know that the Club Manor corridor doesn't qualify us for any other grants that I can think of. It gives us, in my opinion, based off the previous scoring matrices, better chances for things like the Club Manor roundabout, or things that finish out those regional connections. But yeah.
Could the people that took us on our Northwest tour have any input?
Could they?
As far as
sure
financing.
As far as what?
As far as grants.
Yeah, well, even in the back of the book, it lists a ton of different grants that you can apply for. Yeah, they would.
I've had more positive feedback for us doing things for bicycles than I ever did about pickleball courts. And they're asking me, are we getting Walton money? How are we gonna do it? How soon are we gonna do it?
We get Walton money.
Walton money.
Yeah. I did kinda laugh at that. But people are excited about the bicycles.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Pedestrian improvements.
So what if we created a line item that said path upgrades, or we could just keep it in path improvements? Like we do with infrastructure, you'll see we have 3 different items in infrastructure.
I'd almost say do a new line item, that way the money doesn't get lost, I mean,
Yeah.
that,
And we might even be able to use a project or program code to track all money related to the transportation plan. In other words, there might be a way that you can if the council so desired, to track it separately, maybe in a way similar to that we track grant projects.
Yeah, I can separate them.
In other words, we could pull it out and track the appropriated amount, create its own fund, and really track the money coming in and going out related to upgrades, which I think has, if you do that and if it's funded, there's no one coming back in 5 or 10 years saying that you didn't work to accomplish anything that was in the plan.
So if we do a separate one, would that be another 100,000, or you want 200,000 in that to add? Are we adding 200,000 to the total?
And we could work on some of those details, but if y'all are thinking about 200,000, then yeah.
A separate line item for 200,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
If that's, I mean, it's really. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's hard for me to settle on a number because it's so random. It's a little bit what comes first, the chicken or the egg? I can't really tell you how much I would want to appropriate because I don't know what this random $200,000 amount is going to get us. Is that going to get us new pathways? Is it gonna connect pathway? All the things that are in that plan, there's several different categories, you know what I mean? What did they call it? It was super important. They called it, like where they're gonna put signs. I think that's, they called that something. They had a really good. What?
The wayfinding
Wayfinder,
route
yeah.
determin-
I think that's super important. So it's hard for me to just randomly say, yeah, here's $200,000. But I don't know what we're gonna do with that specifically.
Yeah, and so, and that's kind of what I hear you, and I guess my counterpoint to that, unless we're talking big projects, right? Is that's exactly how we handle things like overlays and path improvements or drainage repairs, is this idea of saying this is just a certain amount of money, back it in, like give me the number that the council thinks is an affordable amount for the street fund, and I can back the projects in to meet that number.
Right.
Alternatively, you know, I could just come up with projects, that'd be like coming in here and saying I want $45,000 to overlay Champs, and then somebody says, well, that's not in my ward, and what about this road? And so it's up to the council as to how you all want to fund that and deal with it.
Would it be possible to, whatever number the council wants tonight, then you come back 3 months or 6 months into the new year and say, here's how much we spent out of that, here's what the projects we accomplished out of it, so they can get a better feel
for what that, yeah,
project
you can do, we're not gonna accomplish, you're talking about what we finished in 3 months in?
Or what you plan.
With all that we have happening in the
What the
first,
plan is, yeah.
right out
Well,
of
so
the first quarter.
probably the way I would do that is we'd start with I think half of the projects in phase one are, sort of affordable, non-massive projects that have big bang for the buck. And we just start going out and trying to price those out, figure out how much money you've got until we hit that sweet spot of getting there.
Well, we're not gonna ever make any path upgrades unless we budget for it. And 100,000 in path improvements isn't gonna cut it, because that's just taking care of what we've already got.
Yeah.
So I would be for putting a line item in there and then throw some seed money at it.
I think we definitely should have a line item. I think
Yeah.
it should definitely be separate because it's like you said, it's completely different than what we're already doing, maintenance that we're already doing, right?
Yeah.
So, and we want to know what money is going specifically to that plan, that initiative. So I think it should absolutely be a separate line item. I just don't know how much to 200,000 doesn't sound
It
like
doesn't sound like
much to me.
And honestly, the street safety, like you were talking about on Arnold Palmer, the other night, I came down, we came in on White Oak and then cut across on,
Country Club Parkway?
Country,
Parkway?
yes, and there were cars parked all down the bicycle lanes. And I mean, this much room on the sides, and if you were actually trying to ride through there,
On Arnold
can't.
Palmer?
no.
On Country Club
on
Parkway.
Country Club,
Oh, yeah,
Arkansas.
yeah, I've seen that.
So,
Yeah.
I know on our trip, the few places we actually rode in the street where there wasn't any kind of protection at all.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a proficient rider, and it just made me crazy.
Oh, I'm great at it.
Because you opted not to have a battery on your bicycle.
It was awful.
We've got two different theories. What does the council want?
I say let's start it, like Chad called it seed money, and have a line item for $200,000 for path upgrades. See where we are in 3 months as to how it's gonna look like as far as the total amount on these projects you're talking about. Kind of feel
I'd
like it's
almost rather put a little bit more money in there
Well,
and
that's
not
what
use it.
I agree with you.
I was gonna
And have
say,
them
it's
come
probably
back
gonna be
and
more.
say, we need more, we haven't really accomplished much with this.
I'll go with whatever the council decides as far as an amount.
I think any amount over, I don't know what the number is, 700,000 becomes really more project-based and not just like, here, go spend this on, right?
I was
So-
thinking more along the lines, somewhere between 300 and 500 would be a compromise.
And we could do that and then come, start backing it in, and then come back to the council with what we think those projects are gonna look like, at the start. If that's what y'all want. In other words, kind of a hybrid of putting the money in, but then come back and report with, this is what it looks like we're aiming for, and this, like a mayor's comment sort of thing, or an occasional agenda item, but just a report and update on what it's looking like from time to time. So you missed the show, Chad.
Oh. I wouldn't say I missed it, no.
You're watching live stream. So tell me, council agree on a number. I've heard 200,000, 300,000, 500,000.
Split the difference and say 400.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we're saying 4?
Okay.
Is that
And what are we gonna call that? Upgrades or?
path upgrades?
Path upgrades.
Okay.
And I'm going to open it.
Although if we could call it anything, if the council thought there was a better line item for.
No, I mean, I think that's fine. I just wanted to make
I
sure
would
that
leave it, general enough that you could do
Mm.
pedestrian upgrades with it.
But then
path,
it sounded
whatever.
different than just general improvement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have an agenda, Caleb, or you just?
Oh, no.
Okay, so I had one, I realized I should have mentioned this when we were talking about grants. This is something you and I have talked about, I think, once or twice. Do you think the city is big enough to merit having a grant writer on staff?
I've heard different things from different people, and I've run into, my personal experiences with grant writers range from miracle workers to,
Lead balloons?
yeah, there we go. I was thinking that person whose job it is to fill out a form, the value in a grant writer are really good grant writers are amazing, because they can not only find you grants, but they understand what that grant is looking for, how they want it worded, how you frame it, and the language you use, and present it in terms of meeting the criteria of that particular grant. And I've heard that those folks are worth every penny that you pay them. And then you talk to the next mayor who says, well, that's a paper pusher position. And I think it just depends on that person. I was talking to someone who suggested there are some people who do grant writing and have that as like their business, and you hire them as like an independent contractor, and they kind of work on their own and are in the loop, and you're hiring them.
Can they get a percentage of that grant?
And some of them will get a percentage of the grant for that.
So that's actually what I do for a living. I'm not applying for that, but I'm just, to explain it, yes, it's just, you're a freelance grant writer, and I've been in positions where I've had somebody like that in my employment. And so you kind of just bring them in and pay them on a contract basis, so they're not a full-time employee, which is great, because then you don't have to do all the insurance and benefits and things like that and have them on full retainer or whatever. And you just bring them in, and there are cycles for grants, so you can bring them in for cycles. It's definitely not a paper pushing position for sure, but that's what I would recommend, is like a contract worker, not a full-time.
And do you also do the receivable, the application to get the grant follow up, and then
I
the
do.
recovery when
Yes.
when the bills are paid?
I do the
I
full
know.
gamut of like nonprofit stuff, marketing, grants, all that. I don't love grants, but they're kind of a necessity. The problem with grants, it's literally like a shot in the dark because they're so competitive. So So you do have to find somebody who's really, really good at it, and who, like you said, kind of knows the foundations and knows what they're looking for. And otherwise, you're spending a great deal of time, we're paying them, grants are time consuming, and because they're so competitive, that's why your statistics or probability of getting that grant are not super high. So that's why it looks like, oh, well, that person, she's not that great because he or she doesn't have that many grants that are awarded. Well, you never know. I mean, they could be a great grant writer and still not have, it just depends. But my recommendation would be to have somebody on a contract basis.
I would like to get a point there because it's good idea. Because I have a list of grants, and then my first question is, who is applying for them? No, in finance we are not doing that. I am even trying to follow up on recover the grants that were applied before. For example, the all-inclusive park, it was easy one for us because we apply, and then I already will recover it. But if I have it on hand, but I don't know what others are around there that the expert, let's call it an expert, knows where to go, where to get the grant. I don't know. I just wanted to mention that.
There's a lot of time in taking to research grants to find to apply. Then there's a lot of research and time that goes into actually writing the grant. Then, like you said, once you get the receivables, you have to track it, and a lot of times you have to report back to the grant. So I honestly don't know how you guys are doing it now.
Because we don't have many.
It's hard, yeah.
I just was recovering, and I had to present the financials that we were delayed, so I kind of did some financials in order that I can present them and recover what was outside already.
It varies by the grant. It varies by the grant.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And there are some
And
grants
some are
that
very easy to get the money, and then
Yes.
some you have to send in your firstborn's DNA to prove that you are who you say you are.
Well, and what's funny is I've applied for grants that, are 50,000 or more that are 2 pages long and super easy, and then I've applied for grants that are, less than 5,000 that are 10, 15 pages long. So, yeah, that's where you have to kind of prioritize too.
Yeah. The police and fire departments, just you to know, they are the ones that apply directly from the grants, but they are very little grants. I don't have any. We don't have any big one that I need to be following up on.
And I think they could still apply for grants. I think if there were a contract grant writer, they could still send some of these smaller grants to the police, fire, whomever, that have the time to do these smaller grants. And then their focus could be on the larger grants.
And I don't know what grants we're missing out on. Right? I mean, I get all sorts of emails, whether it's from your legislative aides for your congressmen or senators that you have relationships with that they'll send out different grants that you can apply for, and I'm unaware of any grants that we could competitively apply for that we're not applying for.
Just that one that Dave Roberts brought up.
The reason I
So-
just brought it up is, we just talked about it, and I was curious. I didn't, we don't wanna leave money on the table, but as you said, it's very hard. It's like highly specialized field. So it's hard for people who aren't in it like me to know, like, is there $1 billion out there? I have no idea.
I definitely don't think we wanna hire someone full-time, like a position,
I
because
wouldn't think so
if
either,
there's
but
no
I
one
think a
here that
contractor
knows
would
what they
be
do or
the
how
way
to
to
do
go.
it, we're either gonna have to pay them more and recruit like the best of the best, or get somebody that's like training, and then I'm tired of supervising people who I don't know how to do their job. Because it makes it very difficult to assess whether they're doing their job, whether they're doing it properly, and but the idea of a contract person is not bad. But anyways, budget.
400,000 path upgrades.
Yeah, well, so I was going back to, I guess, the city attorney brought up this question in terms of the budget.
I have
Would Christine know?
Christine, or Ms. Cromwell, would you know?
Yes, Christine's here. Yeah, well, it depends on how much you wanna do, like, if you wanna do it twice a year, or kind of during the main grant cycles. For example, others, a general hourly fee, would be like $100 to $125 an hour. The grant writer that I employ, it was a lot less than that. We worked out like a special deal. But then you also have to build some parameters around that. You're gonna work X amount of hours or X amount per month so that you stay within a budget. So I think we could, kind of like what we just said with the pathways, agree on an amount and stay within that. I mean, I honestly think for 1 year we could do it for far less than 50,000, far less. But I would just put 30 to 50,000 in there.
Are you guys discussing how much to set aside for possibly having a grant writer?
Yeah, a line
A
item.
contractor, yeah.
You might have already discussed it. I'm sorry, I'm feeling quite under the weather. I'm literally on the site, the government site that talks about grants and that sort of thing. In the past, just to give you guys some history, when we needed a grant writer per se, and Christine is very reputable, and also Deb Roush is, we would hire Catholic Central Arkansas Planning District, who I'm literally given access to find us grants at this moment. And typically in the past, the amount paid is based upon the money that they are able to get.
I've never done it that way.
25%.
And also paying them a percentage of what they get is in the industry.
Super high.
No, that we never do that. I've never heard of that. That would be no.
I would think that would be very motivational.
Not double tapping, just not seen as super ethical. That's bizarre in the nonprofit world, but then we're talking about something different.
This
is the city, you know,
the
government.
The 20% of the grants, actually I was referring to my nonprofit experience. What we pay Capidetti is a flat contract rate. I could look it up, but they did not receive a percentage of the rate. My experience with nonprofit has been the 20%. It's just a little extra information. If you guys needed that.
You only pay if they get.
Anyway, so what are we doing with grant writing stuff?
I probably confused the situation.
Christine suggested 30 to 50,000.
And I think that's more than, I think that's more than enough, but, especially for the first year to kind of feel it out and see how it goes, and give them a goal of submitting X number of grants, with the hope of, you know, being awarded X number of dollars, you know, have those parameters around for them. I think 50,000 would be reasonable. And then if we need to increase or decrease the next year, or do away with it completely, it didn't work, or.
I know the grant writer for the mayor of Detroit. I could see what he makes.
I think citywide services, probably just under professional other, would be the most relevant spot. I don't know that we included grant writing services, so we'd go out.
So that wouldn't go in.
Are we actually going to use this, or are we just talking about something?
I think we can evaluate if you want, but I can quote also and work with the team.
Well,
What's that?
Well, A, who would oversee it, and
Apparently
B,
me.
and then B, how much when you rate.
If you're gonna talk, speak up, 'cause you're all.
With municipal grants, how many of them do you find need matching or are only a percentage of the project?
If it runs the gamut, we have some 100% grants, most seem to be 75, 80%. The parks one we just had was 50% match.
My experience would be that most of them are going to be like that, so you would be needing to allocate additional funds. So I wouldn't just look at the price that you're paying for the grant writer and the grants that they're getting in, but are you going to want to fund those projects? Otherwise, it's maybe.
We paid a grant writer to get us grants that we don't have funds allocated for.
Well, not only that, I don't know, the issue is I don't know what I don't know that we're leaving anything on the table. In other words, I have never seen a grant, but I don't live looking up grants. But I'm not aware of any grants that we could qualify that fit a project that we've been talking about, that we just haven't talked about. From time to time, someone lets us know about a grant that we might qualify for, and you go, oh great, now let's see, are there any projects that fit this, or am I just applying for a grant because I can get a grant? Now, you give me 100% grant, no matching city funds, and I'll find projects all day long. So I'm not sure what we're leaving on the table, but that might be one of the whole reasons you want to hire somebody who knows about municipal grants, who can keep up with what the city has going on, try and match our needs to their knowledge database of grants that we could be applying for but aren't. But I don't.
Yeah, to Tina's point, you would need a municipal grant writer.
I talked to the municipal league about this when I first became mayor, maybe in 2020, and I said, how do we, everyone keeps talking about grants, here's the ones that we're applying for, but are we leaving anything on the table? And they had talked about that they were gonna get a grant, someone that handles grants, and they ended up getting an attorney that is a grant writer and stuff and does great and really helped the state municipalities out during COVID and stuff, but I don't know that I've seen anything from them that pointed out grants that we're leaving on the table for relevant projects. We know of one grant that we could be applying for that we just learned about that might be decent at Park on the River, but we haven't even sort of sussed out exactly what. Yeah. So to add, yeah.
I just think it looks like we're trying to find ways to spend money, and I don't know that we necessarily need to spend money on a grant writer since we don't have any intentions of.
Well, looking to the future, we're looking at a fire station. We're looking at $1 million fire truck. We're looking at all of these other
But I
assets.
can guarantee you we're not leaving, the fire department is not leaving fire station money grants on the table, 100%.
Bola's currently applied for 21 grants and some other fire people, so they're actively looking for grants.
Of all the departments that we're not missing relevant possible grants, it's gonna be the fire department. We got wildland fire gear this year. For it's probably wildland fire, what is it, wildfires, which they do from time to time, but it was 100% grant. They're finding every nickel. But your point still stands.
Yeah.
But we spent a lot of time on this. What am I, if anything, putting in the budget?
Mr. Mayor, I kind of agree with Mr. Gardner there. I'm not really in the mood to hire anybody at this point here. We seem to be getting by just fine with what's going on.
Why don't I do this? Here's what I can do. I've heard some good things about grant writers. Maybe I can go sit down and meet with someone that's in this field to say, are we missing out? I know you can, they do some work for some surrounding cities that are much bigger and sit down with them and figure out if we are leaving money on the table and what types of things we are leaving money on the table, or if we're not getting approved for as many grants because they can, and just sit down and talk with someone and then come back with feedback on that. I can do that too.
I think it bears some research.
I completely agree with that. I think talking to some other cities who have grant writers and things like that would be a great idea.
I have been, yes, okay, I can do that, and I know a couple people. I know people who know people, is the better way to put it. So just so I understand, I'll reach out to, that's my coaster. I'll reach out and see what I can't find out and see if there's more information and we are leaving money on the table. If we're leaving money on the table, we could be getting for projects we're already doing. It seems like a no-brainer.
Well, and to your point too, we don't want to apply for grants just to apply for grants, but specifically for projects. But my thought is, what if there's a grant out there for a project that we haven't thought about?
Yeah. No, you're right. Okay, I'll look that up. I was going to talk about this, but I'm not 100% sold on it's something that should be sold. Just plant this seed in the back of your head for some other time. Animal Services is a division of Public Works. Animal Services is supervised by Mike Hogan, and so under Public Works, you have Public Works, street sanitation, grounds crew, vehicle maintenance, and animal control. By and large, animal control is run by Chris. He now has a seat at the table for staff meetings. He still has to route some things through Public Works. But I have not encountered a situation in 5 years where it was really a Public Works decision on animal control or animal services thing. I think that should be its own department at some point. I was wanting to go into that, but I also want to see if we can get out of here tonight and not have to come back. So keep that seed in the back of your mind, and we'll move on. Judge Bailey brought up court salary. She brought up, she had submitted in her budget a request for 6% more for the bailiff slash person who is the glue down there, quite frankly. I didn't build it in because I just didn't have a good mechanism for doing that. If the council wants to include that, we can. Then she had not submitted to me other requests that came about. One of those requests was to increase the chief court clerk pay. Interestingly, I had tried to get a hold of her before we put together the budget to see if she would want to increase that position, the pay for that position. That position has had a lot of turnover. It has a lot of responsibility, and is kind of probably due for an adjustment of some sort. What page is
Page
courts on?
21.
Thank you.
21.
I kind of asked how much she thought, and she said 45, 46, 47, 48. I tried to get something a little more specific. I think that chief court clerk position really should be making more money to try and attract someone to that position that's been vacant for months now.
50K?
What's that?
50K?
That's higher than even she asked for, so I'd say
We want to get it
no.
filled.
Well, yeah, so she asked for 45, 46, 47, 48.
45 to 48.
45, 46 seems right in line with what she thinks was comparable to that position in Jacksonville. So.
46 a midpoint? Or too little?
It seems kind of in the middle. It seems kind of in the middle of what she was asking for, the ranged increase that she was asking for, so.
46?
46? Does that sound good?
Okay.
Does it need to be like a random dollar just to make it look different?
Or percentage?
$13 or something?
And then for the bailiff position, the bailiff got a really big raise, and that position is more important because they don't have a reliable chief court clerk. So the bailiff, and it's more than bailiff, it's bailiff probation officer, it's the person who knows the course and knows how it works. Without that current, I'm talking about a person, not a position. Without the person that's currently in that position, it is a very important position. I don't think it should have to be that important, but it's the glue that holds the courts to any sort of more chaos.
So is he sort of a hybrid at the moment where he's doing
The
bailiff duties
position
and
is
the
actually, I think,
court clerk?
is probation officer / deputy court clerk.
Right.
It's what it was for quite a while. But you'll find that I don't think we've had a court clerk there who knew half as much about being a court clerk as he did since I've been there. So I'm just trying to give context for that. On the other hand, I don't know what the comparables are on that. I don't know how that compares to other cities or so. It does come with a 3% merit increase, up to a 3% merit increase. Andrew, I'm not sure if you want to.
Am I correct that Judge Bailey was asking for 6%?
6% was the requested number.
I can mean, I'll second everything that Caleb said. The bailiff slash deputy clerk he is the glue that holds it all together down there, especially without there being a chief court clerk for the last few months. He's had to work a lot of overtime as a result of that. So I certainly think 6% is appropriate, but
Well, I had a number I wrote down, 67,000
Yes,
for it. So.
741 is
Yeah.
6%
That
increase
would be
from
the 6%.
That's what she was asking for.
Yes, but you didn't get the okay.
We didn't build it in because we didn't get an okay.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what she asked for, and I don't think that's unreasonable.
Okay, okay.
Would that limit his overtime? Or, he has a great deal of overtime too, right?
I think right now it's largely because they're down. They're all kind of trying to cover each other because there's no chief court clerk. So Kathy has gone to full-time when she really wants to be part-time. I think there's gonna be more overtime in the future, yes.
So possibly if they fill that chief court clerk position, then that would cut down on a lot of overtime, don't you?
Yes.
I don't,
Well, I mean,
And can I turn the air
Yeah.
up? I'm freezing, okay.
it shuts off
yeah,
periodically. I turned it up thinking about you when we walked
I'm
in.
always very confused.
I think the goal is that to help eliminate some of the overtime. But
I don't know, for the chief court clerk, I don't think that the salary range for the probation officer, deputy court clerk puts it in a position where they're no longer qualified for overtime, because I don't know that it meets the FLSA. It's not an executive position. The city attorney could look into that. In other words, are we moving it into hey, you tried to give me a grant writer all of a sudden. So
I have no idea. I assumed it would still be hourly, but.
I don't think it meets the.
Grant writer should report to the attorney.
Well, I thought about that, but then if he did, then you've got the city attorney coming up with projects now.
Yeah.
So anyways, I don't think it changes that. The court assistant position is going from part-time to full-time. She also requested a merit increase there. I think we run into a little bit of issues maybe with that in equity with other comparable positions in the city. We don't have another position that kind of spot on hits that chief court clerk position. So there aren't comparables, but that court assistant is basically an assistant two, and the city has numerous assistant two positions. And I was talking with HR, this puts that position out of line with the other comparable positions. I think that moving from part-time to, my personal opinion, the council makes its decision. I think that personally going from part-time to full-time, and then if we get a proposal in time to do the comparables and all of this, that we can look into that and see what that adjustment is. But going from part-time to full-time carries with it a pretty big boost in terms of costs with benefits and the whole 9 yards already.
So is that one left at 32,156, 136?
It's up to the council. I was just sharing my thoughts on that particular position.
Now, didn't the judge ask for it to be like 35 or 38K?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
I wrote that down, so 35 to 38.
Yes.
If that takes them outside the comps,
Yeah, I would agree with what.
That's what I'm saying. So that position is kind of an admin 2 position, and we have other admin 2s in the city. That then this one is way out of whack, and I'll be dealing with the blowback on why this one is paid at a higher rates than these ones over there.
Well, I think I wasn't paying attention. What did you propose?
I proposed, well, it's going from, currently this year it's going from part-time to full-time.
Okay.
And I think that increase with the benefit package and all of that is a good start, and I think that if we're having problems, my personal opinion.
So it stays somewhere around 32?
I think it stays at that hourly rate. That would be my recommendation. Keep it at that hourly rate, move it from part-time to full-time, and examine it again next year.
Okay.
What if we did just a slight bump from 32 to 34?
To be the double, see? That would
What do
be
you
the
mean, what
double.
if we did that? Well, I can tell you what will happen is by tomorrow, and I've already had requests to raise if we're raising this position, here are other comparable salaries for positions. And so one of the department heads are not really allowed to come in here and ask for things that weren't in their budget, because we haven't had a chance to look at them and go through those sort of things. There's 3 people that come in and present to you that don't report to me. That's the judge, city attorney, and city clerk, right? And so I wouldn't allow a department head to come in with a last minute request that they didn't submit and that we didn't run through HR, that we haven't had a chance to think about and look at what the comparables are at a budget meeting. So the downfall for that is I have had department heads already reach out to me and say, if you're giving the court clerk this amount, then I want my person to get this amount, because they do the same sort of job. I had it while the meeting was going on, because they were watching it.
That's tough. Tough position to be in.
What's that?
Tough position for you guys to be in.
So anyways, are we increasing it, remaining the same? It's a big cost jump going from part-time to full-time. I think that's a generous grant by the,
So admin twos, what do they make?
we don't have a pay scale in here.
No,
I mean, in other departments.
I can look them up.
Yes, we can, I can send you I can tell the city clerk, who is called that, who is the assistant? Who told you that? Sorry.
I'm not
You
saying
don't-
names.
Okay, well, just to look for the.
What you're not gonna get from here though is
Well,
the
yeah,
comparables.
well, could be
Well, I
the
mean,
human
what
resources.
department has,
Okay, I have one.
okay.
One assistant, HR administrative assistant, in the page 16. She has a salary of 34,278. I don't know if it is comparable, because we don't have comparable. but
We can just start naming, if we wanna go into this. This is the problem with people coming in and making proposals that they haven't submitted as part of their packet. And then just coming in at the last minute and sitting in the chair and making stuff
And
up
this one's
that
been here
that
since
aren't part of what the
November
requests were
of
before.
22, and that one's been there
Personally, I'm
since
good with it.
May of 20.
What it is.
I'm good with that.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
The deputy clerk is gonna be waiving her, not my, is gonna be waiving the benefits, waiving her benefits.
Does she work for the court?
Yes, district courts.
You talking about the court assistant?
Kathy.
Kathy, okay.
I don't, just because a person waives benefits. I see this a lot, where somebody can waive a benefit, but then they can also have a qualifying event later on, and it changes, and they're not waiving benefits anymore. So I would make a decision based on whether or not a person is waiving benefits. I would pay a rate that's appropriate for that particular position.
Or
Life
they'll want a
events.
higher wage in lieu of benefits.
Things can change, those qualifying events pop up, and they're on the
Work that
hook
way
for
where I work.
7 or 8 grand in benefits.
I have benefits or I don't.
It's like our health and welfare benefit,
I think that's an appropriate salary, if y'all do.
the 32.
Whatever the mayor budgeted.
That was the same hourly rate they currently get, plus the 3% merit increase, but also going from part-time to full-time.
Okay, well, let's just leave it there.
So leave it in 32?
Leave it at the same
Okay.
hourly rate.
So we figure out
Plus
probation
3%.
officer bailiff, what we're doing?
The consensus that I seem to get was the 6%.
Okay.
67,741.
Another 3% something in there. 46K on the chief clerk.
The next thing was the clerk's request for a 6% increase for the deputy city clerk.
Yes, page 12. And the salary will be 37,371,36 if the 6% is authorized.
37 what?
37,371,36. Well, according to what I have here. I don't know what salary she has now. Tina?
She doesn't have the 35 right now, 35,256?
It's because the 2023 budget, just for everybody knowledge, is not what they have now, all the people, is what it was authorized in the previous book. But the 2024 column, I did it based on what they are doing now, plus the 3% everybody to have some kind of a reality for 2024. So let me see.
So everybody's getting a 3% raise, right, across the board?
Across the board, there is a 3% merit increase.
It says
That
we're
is-
asking for
that-
3% more.
It's merit-based. Almost everyone gets the 3%, and if you get less than 2.5%, you're probably not working here long, because you have to score so low on the evaluations. But so I do want to point out that it's not 3% for everyone. There will be people who get 2.9 or 2.8 or 2.7.
But by and large.
Yeah.
So.
And then
this is, Tina's asking for 3% more on top of that for her deputy
I took it
clerk.
as a 6% on top of that.
Oh, okay.
No,
Just
So,
6.
so you're asking for a 3% adjustment.
a total of 6%.
A total, yeah.
So it's 37,371. Like
Okay,
that,
so we would
somewhere.
call that a 3% adjustment and a 3% merit.
I like what
Right.
you said better, but that's not what that's not what
Yeah. I think that's fair. That's not much money.
It's not, and she took a pay cut, from accounts payable to come and work for the clerk's office, and she still works in
Yeah, but
accounts
he's
payable.
We already talked about.
That's a big job.
If it's easier for you guys, I can step outside of the, room if you feel more comfortable.
No, you're fine.
And just watch you live stream.
Hang on, so what you're saying, I'm gonna back up to courts then. Was Judge Bailey asking for a 3% merit plus a 3% increase? Or the 3% merit plus 6%?
6%.
Okay. What do you mean 6%? 3% merit plus 3% or 3% merit?
No. It was 6% in total.
3 and
Because
3.
that's what I wrote
That's
it
what I
down.
understood too.
Yeah, 3 and
So
3.
3
Okay.
and 3.
So we increase that 3%.
Yes. And this is the same that Tina, am I right, Tina? So it is 37,371.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not very much money.
Yeah, you wanna keep your good people.
You do.
And even if you take the person out of it, am I allowed to talk?
Yes.
Even if you,
I could stop you if I wanted to.
well,
And I don't want to. but I could.
I'm being televised. Okay. I mean, even if you take the person out of it, the job itself, I mean, she does an amazing job, but even if you took her out of it, the workload itself it's a big job. And that department only has 2 people in it. I mean, if you looked at the job description, it's heavy for that low of a salary.
Administrative jobs are heavy.
Yeah. But it's even above, I mean, she's a deputy city clerk. It's even above just administrative.
I'm for the increase.
So it's okay?
Is that a consensus, guys?
Yes, it's okay, right?
No objection.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, the Bible says the workman is worthy of his hire.
You
You're
also
supposed
gotta
to
look
be
at it too. If you lose your good people, how much is it gonna cost you to replace them?
She
You're
knows
actually going
more scripture than
And
anybody
then
I
get
know.
the job done well, all this, that.
Really?
Things get
Yes.
missed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, there was discussion about maybe even adding a second new operator for Parks and Rec. Just as a refresher, Parks and Rec had 2 more folks during the budget crunch. The general fund budget crunch, there was, we removed 2 operator positions. They've asked for 1 back and then said that they want to come back next year and ask for another operator. But I think if you were to ask him, I think he'd be thrilled to have the 2 back that he had 3-4 years ago. And so,
It is in page 43, the parks.
I was talking to some of the guys doing the green space cleanup and the weed eating this and that, and they were talking about how short-handed they are. Right.
That would be, well, it depends on where that green space is, but it was probably Public Works. Yeah. So Parks, we're adding a new Parks operator. We say new, it's an old one that's being re-added back. I think it'd be a good year just to add back the second, put them back to the staffing levels they were at several years ago, and just knock it out in one go.
We're giving them a lot more to do.
A lot more to do, and then we've given them that many people to deal with less stuff than they currently have to deal with.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah. Next year.
So add that second Parks operator back in.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this puts their staffing at what it was basically 5 years ago.
And it's full of time, right?
Yes.
Let me hit something. At the last council meeting, there was discussion about the Lake Williston playground. Philip very quickly, let's see, glanced at what a playground would cost at the at Lake Williston. He just quickly grabbed 3 different playgrounds, so I could pass these around. 2 of them, and you see the pictures, are the price, and then generally for its price plus surfacing. Surfacing you can typically figure roughly 50% of the price. So he's got 2 of them that are $170. So add half of that back in, and then one that was $223. And he's not saying that like this is the what you have to choose. He's just saying because it came up as something maybe to add back in.
Ooh, look at this.
And Mayor, that's the structure
Oh
price?
man, that's a lot of
That's
stuff.
the-
Looks like fun. It does look like fun.
I would love that.
That's what's pictured.
And the kids will love climbing on top of the slide and jumping on the roof. Because my kids did.
So those are just ideas to see.
Would this be something where we expand the current playground or tear down and replace?
Wasn't it you that came up with the idea?
Well, so here's why I'm asking, like, because if you could expand it, it gives another area to play on. But I don't know if that's worth doing because my kids have played on that equipment and now they're playing on less and less because there's parts missing. So I'm not sure if it's worth keeping. That's a question for
Yeah,
that's a question for Philip. But like
I
I'm
think-
thinking, are
I
you
think-
adding a new pad somewhere and building on
I
top?
think the idea was you're rebuilding that one.
Okay.
Though I don't know that that necessarily has to be the case. Like if you wanted to add a second one, but then we'd be, back here in a couple of years asking to replace the older one.
I don't think we wanna do the investment on something like that, of putting a structure in there until we get the security a little bit better in Lake Williston.
I don't know that we've had any vandalism issues with the playground though.
Well, I'd hate to put something new in, find out we do.
But we don't have any security at the splash pad and the playground. So
Yeah, Lake Williston's a little bit different, though. That's a little bit more off, out of sight.
So the security,
'Cause I hear
I
complaints-
respect
hear
your
complaints
position.
about
The
Williston.
security issues was related to the cars that are parked at Lake Williston. And break-ins that occur in the cars. I don't think we're having, we have vandalism, usually graffiti or kids blowing up the bathrooms on a regular basis. I say kids, hopefully it's kids blowing it up and not adults. Or just,
Smells like
that sort of
weed.
stuff. What's that?
It always smells like weed in the bathroom.
It smells like.
The zoo.
But so, anyways, we don't have to hang out there. It was a discussion point, and so he brought those by and said,
I'd like to
pass
see
it on.
something like that done, but I'd like to beef up our
Yes, sir.
camera system there a little bit.
How easy is it to patch the surfacing? I think that was what I've noticed the most about being a problem there at Lake Williston.
I think Philip's
Seemed like
talked
there's
about that
little
before.
Bad spots,
They
like
do that
coming down a slide you hit and
I think they do that fairly frequently.
they?
It's not too expensive. I think they've got it just built in. You could do a resurfacing and just tear out the surfacing, but
I think he cuts it out, right, and redoes it.
Philip says
Yeah.
they do it.
They can fix
I
it.
think they do it, yeah.
The actual issue isn't so much the surfacing, it's the playground is breaking.
Okay, I haven't really noticed the playground problem.
So like, there used to be like some monkey bars, but a few of the bars broke, so they just took that part of equipment off. because you can't buy it's sort of modular, and you can't, once they get a certain age, you can't buy the part that fits into it.
There is value in selling that equipment though, because we auctioned off an elementary school and the playground equipment brought $30,000 per section for used playground equipment.
Wow.
Well, when you look at what it costs to replace. So,
I know we're talking about spending a lot of money, and something that's just been, I guess, on my mind is the fact that we consistently grow our general fund and street fund, and I think also a conservative part fiscally is not sitting on taxpayer dollars as well. I've mentioned multiple years about Lake Willistine. I would be for doing something out there. We already have an existing park, and we're basically just putting a new structure in. I would love to see it happen. We've given parks a lot to do over the last few years. This one really isn't that big of a deal because you're dropping it onto an existing site with maybe some renovations. But I would love to see Lake Willistine improved because that is our most used park.
Well, and there's so many complaints on social media about how run down the playground park area has become.
And it's the signature
It is.
place
It's
for
the
families.
jewel.
It's
It is the jewel.
It's the first place that new families go. That's where they meet new, friends and other families.
and having lived in my area where when we moved there with my children, we had the park off of Kingsland that is now like 3 pieces of equipment, a swing and one thing to climb on, and that's about it. And because we didn't replenish, we just took out.
I don't know, we built that I can think of, since we've been involved, Steve, I know we built the all-inclusive playground. I can't think of a time we appropriated money to replace playground equipment. There was a big push.
We always just repair it. I don't
We
think we've
just
ever
repair it,
replaced
but like no replacing
Yeah.
that, and so it's been 11 years. The pocket parks, a number of years ago, there was this push away from pocket parks. And that idea that like small community playgrounds were just too expensive to replace the playground that just serves a few neighborhoods, and there was a push toward sort of regional playgrounds. So if that's the current strategy, then we need to upgrade the regional playground. That wasn't my point. That was just a fun aside. The reality is we have numerous pocket parks. Turtle Park, for those that have been around forever, is not really Turtle Park anymore, right? It's just a big open grass area that has like a swing or something. That at one point in time was a full little playground area. That when these things break, we take them down, and then we're not replacing them and upgrading them. So some people that move next to parks are now next to a green grass area in some areas. So I'm on board with that. It also, we talk about, we have a lot of money in the general fund. We talk about wanting to find capital projects that use those money without ongoing, reoccurring, annual expenses to keep the thing right. So this does fit within that. Looking at the two numbers, and these are, he said, surfacing usually costs about half the price of the equipment. If you take the two that are 170, round up to 180 and half, that's what's that? Yeah, that's 270. Is probably what you're looking at for
That
either
doesn't sound like a lot of
270,
money,
300,000
for
for
that.
playground
Yeah.
equipment.
We'll get a lot of bang for that.
Can I say that again?
At least 10 years.
Playground equipment.
Oh, you said meaning that's not. You would support more than that? Is that what you're saying?
No,
sorry.
I'm just saying what the
Oh,
cost that he's
for that.
talking about. It doesn't sound like a lot of money.
We can talk about pocket parks in other years, but I'm in favor of adding
Something that the
fixing
people,
the
a lot
playground
of
at
people
Lake
would
Williston.
appreciate.
Yeah,
And it would help a lot of
Well, we went with just a round number of 300,000.
I think that'd be
Cover
better
the
because
overrun.
here's what's gonna happen, he's gonna check the surfacing, they're gonna go out and look at stuff.
Always a
We're gonna
surprise.
have demo costs, and what we can do is see if there's not ways we can sell those parts of the equipment that we have, cause some school or.
Well, a lot of that is
some-
Other
in-house.
people can't get the parts either.
Okay, so,
We
I'm
collect-
hearing 300,000 for playground?
Yes.
in parks.
Oh, I'm excited about that.
Yeah. And I would also
Fun.
say,
that is really good.
once he gets this kind of, because he obviously did this on the spur of the moment. Once he gets this dialed in with what he thinks would be good for that spot, if it's a different amount, to come back, and let's not just say, oh, it's 310, sorry, that's not in the budget, but to come back and do a full
Well, it may take more site prep.
rundown of what the
There's
options
some
are.
pretty big equipment there.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm proud of us.
Okay, so we have, two big issues that need to be discussed, that was kind of on the brought up stuff and hanging out there, and that was, police salaries and fire salaries. That's all.
Now, on the police salary, they were asking for a pretty nominal 3% increase. Is that what is in?
There was no, okay, so they asked for step increases, or I'm sorry, monthly longevity check increases. Those were built into each of the two departments. That goes from $5.50 a month to $9 a month. And so basically after they've been here for a year, they qualify for longevity. They get paid a couple times a year, and that amount equals the number of months. So it used to be $5.50 per month. If they'd been here for that amount of time, they get that amount per month per year.
I like that though, I think that's good for
We've gone from
recruitment.
$5.50 to
Yeah.
$9. Well, so that's a good point. It actually maybe isn't good for recruitment. Like if we were trying to pump, it's not bad for recruitment. It's good for retention, but not necessarily recruitment. So if you're trying to recruit, you want those big flashy numbers at the bottom, and a lot of those benefits and things like that, or retirement increases, don't usually help with recruiting, because it's not until you've been there for a while that you start thinking about that. And I'm bringing that up because it ties into a lot of the different things. So when we've looked at retention issues or recruiting issues or staffing issues, you try and figure out whether you're not recruiting people or you're not keeping people. Maybe they're leaving after 5 years or 7 years, and like where's the weakness in the salary scale that you're trying to fix? Longevity definitely is, it's laughable. Your first, after you've been here 2 years, you're gonna get 24 times 9 a year, so whatever that is, $200 a year.
But I mean, it builds up,
Yeah,
if
it's
you
great for
stay,
retention.
yeah.
And so that's a big thing. If we're having problems recruiting, and the pay scale issues and changes come into this sort of discussion too. If you're having trouble recruiting, things that pay money to the maxed out ranks isn't necessarily the best way to increase recruiting. If you're having problems retaining your people that are here 10, 15 years or leaving and going away, and you're trying to retain them, giving something flashy to a new recruit doesn't scratch that itch that's going on there. So, just things to remember when you're setting compensation scales. Police, remember we gave in the middle of the year a $5,000 flat across the board adjustment. 2 years ago, we took their recommendation, the FOP's recommendation, and actually boosted it for their salary scale. And then we took the Firefighters Association, the Fire Unions Association, for their pay scale and how they wanted things, and adopted that. We then in the middle of this year, 23, we gave that boost to the police department of 5,000. I think they were down, I don't remember the number of positions, but it was looking really dire. And so we came in and gave that boost to the police scales. I think we need to take advantage of every chance that we can, fit it comfortably in the budget to increase pay for our first responders, because we want those positions to remain competitive, and we want to recruit Little Rock's finest. We want to recruit North Little Rock's finest and get them to become Maumelle's average, if that makes sense, right? Sounds silly to say, but by elevating that, and so in years like this year where we have room to play with, it's a good year to look at focus on salary adjustments. That said, we have a proposal from the police department that's modest, but if you're thinking about it, you should take that and add 5,000 to it. So I think their pay scale was 3%, or for some of the positions it came to. So their difference for their year was forecasted by their numbers to be $73,000, which among their 40 officers is less than $2,000 a person. I haven't done the comparable to see how that's adjusted. So you take that under 2,000 and you kind of add it to the 5,000, because that's the budgetary difference, and that's the amount of raise they will have had since January 1, 2023 to January 1, 2024. So the police have had roughly across the board 6.5, 60, if you give the 1,500 or something, it'd be roughly 6,500 per person. The Firefighters Association, the fire proposal is, their number was 433,000 for their 42 officers, 42 firefighters, I think is the number, which comes to an amount closer to 432, which comes to an amount over $10,000 per position increase. And so while y'all are discussing this, keep that in mind.
You said over 10,000?
And so I've met with it.
Repeat that?
So roughly for the police department last year, I think we spent $220,000 in the middle of the year. There's a $5,000 raise for just over 40 officers, which comes to just over $200,000 per year. The amount that the fire department, and so then if we grant this year's police request according to their numbers, that's another $73,000. It'd be close to 300,000, 290,000, 270,000, right in there for police. They have 40 officers, I think.
Yes, 40 is what he said in the meeting.
So that's coming to roughly the 7,500, 6,500, right in that region. And we can get more details. The firefighter request is for $432,000 roughly for their 42. So that's over 10,000 per person. For those that didn't bring with them Chief Buford's report.
I've not seen that.
It has, for example, here are their raises.
It's in the back.
Because they changed the pay scale, which is what makes it complex. Let me back up. So the firefighters came in and talked with me, and I know they talked with a lot of y'all very early on. And one of the things they want to know is how much money is a reasonable number for us to ask for with the budget. And that's a number that I cannot give them until we have got the department's budgeted submitted, gone through that process, added in the vital positions that we need. You've gone through all of this stuff to look and go, okay, now what is the difference between our personnel and operating costs as compared to our revenue? And we want revenue projections as late in the year as possible. So it's going to be a later number, a later time period before we can give them a number that lets them know what our budget is looking like. So if they had a flat scale and we're just asking for a flat percentage increase or a flat dollar increase, that's very scalable and can be changed and amended. So they could come in and go, oh, you guys only have X dollars, well, we're only going to ask for this much then. Whenever you change the scale such that you're shortening the positions, you're moving positions up and down, you're shortening gaps or creating bigger jumps from the max out of firefighter before the lieutenant, and you're changing that, it's not as mobile, it's not as versatile, because you kind of have to rebuild it every time to fit the available money, right? So if you have $200,000 and you're just giving that to 20 people, that's an easy math. But if you have 200,000 and you're wanting to give X percent to this person, that person, condense the steps, figure out what the actual cost is, because this person might have been in step F, but we don't have a F, so they'd be in a D. There's a lot of variables. So all of that is to say, the firefighters came and were asking what sort of numbers they should be looking at. I didn't have that information. and pass this, once we're now looking at where we're at, I can't just quickly change their scale and mirror it all up. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, if I should just shut up, but, whether I should just shush.
So they're asking for a different scale?
They're asking for a different scale. So they've got, for example, if you're looking at their things, they've got raises that range from $17,000 for one person to as low as $5,700 for another person. And that's just, they changed the scales and made it so you topped out quicker. So most of their division chiefs, fire captains, and lieutenants all would get a raise equal to or greater than 10,000, while all of your firefighters, the firefighter level, would get compensation raises mostly in the windows of 6,000, but it ranges from 57 to 8,100.
Is there an average?
18%.
What's that?
18%.
18% raises?
Yeah.
For everybody.
Across, if you look at the aggregate total on our last page.
Okay.
For the total.
Well, another factor we need to also take into consideration is, on the budget, we've got 3 new police officer positions, and didn't Chief Pickard ask for a 4th, if we could consider it? And then also was.
Fire or police, I'm sorry.
That was in police.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then on the fire, he's asking for another 3 that aren't in the budget.
Correct.
Another 3 entry, which would also enable him to delay us being downgraded from a category 2 to a category 3, which would raise everybody's insurance rates. If we did, allow him to hire another 3 firefighters, not lieutenants like last year, but just
Raise or
firefighters.
lower our insurance rates.
Well, he said what it is, if he
Maintain.
hired more people, then he could apply
Probably also needed
for
the training
extension before the rating change.
Pardon me,
Probably
RJ?
also needed the training center to maintain.
Well, that would be another thing, to keep it there, but, he said he could get a 1-year delay if we did something.
I don't know. So one of the things he's having, and I think he hasn't had it, Chief Buford is planning on having a sort of mock trial ISO scoring, where you can get someone to come in and go through that process for you, but it's not the official answer. And so this came up last time, Councilmember Holt isn't here. I wanted to reiterate, we don't think, the fire department's better staffed than it ever has been. I'm not arguing against more. The reason that we're looking at an ISO rating possibly dropping is really because we think what it looks like is they were using volunteer firefighters to boost our numbers, and some of those volunteer firefighters had not been active in a long time.
Right.
And so it looked like we had a lot more firefighters than we actually did. When they adjusted the volunteer firefighters to the amount that respond to fires on a occasional basis, that number dropped down enough that it jeopardized some of the scoring in ISOs. So all of that is to say we don't have a worse fire department. The rating in this case is not indicative of a department that's getting worse or less efficient or less able to respond to fires. And I'm just communicating that because I think that messaging is very important. It's not like things have gotten worse, they've just got more accurate. But that is correct.
Are they 2 different things, adding officers and?
Yes.
So you're doing raises first and then adding? I might have missed it. Did you guys already discuss adding? So you're
Well,
discussing
no.
raises first and then talking
No,
about whether
we
we're gonna
just
add
kind
them?
of discuss everything, and then occasionally someone might talk about it. You guys,
Oh, discuss amongst ourselves, huh?
Make a decision.
All right, so the city council needs a raise right now.
100%.
Well, because
So-
don't you need to talk about the number
Yeah.
that you're adding before you talk?
Well, if we think about their revenues and their department monies,
What revenues?
I mean, just,
Well, one thing too, if we do add like another position for the police officer and even for the position for the fire department, you gotta find the people then after that. I mean, it could be the type of thing, at the end of the year, we go by and we still don't have the people in place. That's what happened last year, was how the police came up with the rate increase, was because they had a lot of unfilled positions, and so we used the money to raise everybody's wages.
And you have to consider that police as well as fire. For the number that he's giving you there, we have to increase 55% in police for benefits and 65% in fire department. So you have to consider that money, you know.
Didn't cost.
So it is not just the 2 point, I was trying to see the number, the 2.5 that is there, that is the 2.5 plus 65% for all the benefits that the personnel has.
Is that where you were looking?
Yes, because the 2.391 that they put there is just salaries.
What did
we
you
have-
say it was for police?
In average, I have 55% additional for police and 65% additional for fire department. I think it's very important for you to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that any employer has to match, like FICA, you have to match.
Yeah,
what
but
whoever's pulled out people's
specifically
check.
the police and the fire are a little bit more expensive.
Is that because of pension?
Because pension
Okay.
and longevity,
Longevity,
and you know,
okay.
the things, the extra benefits that they have.
Because your health insurance, that stuff is a fixed cost. It's an additional
It is a-
percent, but
but
the
it's for
65% you're referring to is,
It's everything.
got, okay.
Isn't the
Okay.
longevity one of the big issues in one of
Yeah, well, it's everything together. Just, and they also increase from 4 to 9. You know, so it builds, everything builds.
that
Well, they're
longevity
comparing
is
us to
big.
Bryant, which has a comparable fire department, comparable population, nowhere near the same tax income.
Well, remember that I was talking about that comparison that really in this city is necessary at some point in all the departments, not just here. So
Well,
you are right.
Well, Bryant has a 3% sales tax, and 3/8% goes strictly to the fire department, and a
Oh,
quarter
I know
of
what you're
1%
saying.
goes to the fire department. So
Okay.
they're projected this year that the fire department tax alone is $4,120,000. They tried to get a bond issue in November for 2 new fire stations. 16,000 people were eligible to vote, less than 700 did, and it got beat 2-1. So the people in Bryant feel like they're taxed to death already. They don't want to pay anymore. We know we're gonna have to have a fire station. So we gotta look at where all our funding's gonna come from for everything we're gonna need. Do we want, I mean, we're gonna have to have the assets. How do we deal with the pay to go on top of that?
I mean, if we're just talking about pay, we're not talking about his capital,
I know,
Over-
but
it's
you
very
can't have
nice.
one without the other.
Right.
Because if we keep growing, we're gonna have a third fire station. He wants $1 million fire truck. The station's probably gonna be at least 3.
The station was, I mean, so I think the last one we did was 4.5. I think you're looking closer to 6.
yeah, I would imagine.
Is this, do we have one vacancy right now in fire, or has that been filled?
We have one vacancy, but that position is being held open for
that's right.
Groves. Now, that position can be filled effective immediately. We have not had difficulty
That was my
recruiting
root question.
firefighters.
We have that was really what I was asking, is are we having difficulty recruiting?
Well, how many police officers are we down now? I mean, it's like, every staff meeting, we get updated on that, and so it was.
Well, so there is, so
So we were at what, 14?
we,
Yeah.
the,
Yeah, we're doing really.
the fire department is certainly not facing the staffing issues that the police department has and was facing. The fire department is facing a scenario where it has some good folks that are starting to look and apply elsewhere. That on its own, at least under current trends, we never want to lose a good person, but we haven't had difficulties refilling those positions. We don't want to lose good people, but we're not in the same scenario at all with the fire department that we are in the police department. The police department 5 and 6 years ago was saying what the fire department is now. We're starting to see people look elsewhere. There's not as many people in the pool of employees. So we don't want to neglect those issues, but it's certainly not the dire situation that we saw with the police department.
And I don't think it's just to us locally, it's happening all around.
What's the timeline or any cost on the training center? Last year when the chief brought it up, I was kinda like, yeah, it's a nice to have, but after this presentation,
So,
seems to be more important than I thought from last
yeah,
year.
maybe, but Chief Buford said that his number one priority would be the personnel salary. That
You
said,
asked him that or
someone
somebody
asked
asked
him that
him, yeah,
question.
and I think, in my mind, that would be the priority too.
The, I'm speaking for myself. One of his priority is fire safety in Maumelle, and that involves personnel issues, money issues, policy issues, capital project issues, office politics issues. All of these things play into being able to effectively run a department, and you can get a lot of pressure from your people for things like personnel raises, and I am not in any way, shape, or form, I don't even want to say it because then it makes you think it, but I think it's important to look at the department situation. I think that compensation increases for fire is important. I think this is a rich ask. This is twice what we saw from the police department while the police department was in dire straits. I think and respect the firefighters' desire to change the salary scale. We did that with the police. So what had happened a few years back, we had that big budget crunch. We thought the following year was going to be a budget crunch as well. It turned out that at that time, both the fire department and the police department, officers, not departments, the police officers union and firefighters union, had submitted their proposed changes. One of them changed the pay scale up pretty significantly, one didn't. And they individually submitted those. It looked like it was a no-go, and then the budget crunch. The following year, we thought it was going to be a budget crunch, and we last minute, we're like, we are printing the budget books tomorrow. We have money for to be able to give y'all some level of raise. What do you want? Police is like, here, we've been working on something. Fire said, use ours from last year. So the scales are now different, which is fine. They each have different needs. They should have different scales. I respect the firefighters' desire to have a different scale that fits an appropriate dollar amount, right? But when you look at the ask, their situation doesn't warrant this amount of money there. But I think they need something. So how do we go about giving a salary increase? And this is kind of an open-ended question, not necessarily rhetorical. How do we give an increase that shows the employees of this area that they're valuable, we want the good ones to stay, continues to make it so that people can apply for and see this as a good city to be at? I can't slide a number in. It's not like there's a sliding scale that I can slide that number and it changes their scale up. And so the question is, how do we give a raise that doesn't respect what I think is a good idea as a salary scale change, but I don't have there's not a slider that I can just plug in how much money we think should go to that salaries that makes the changes to the scale.
Okay, well, the police are asking for 3% now. How much was the percentage that they ended up getting this last year or this year?
$5,000.
Percentage-wise?
You have the budget book. You can look at the actual salaries from the year prior, or budgeted salaries year over year. I think the police though this time took their currently salaries and just increased everything by 3%.
Right.
So that
trying to get a picture. 4.5, and then another 3%. So that's like 7.5%. They've had increases since the last time the fire, because they didn't have one last year or this year.
They didn't have the mid-year.
They did have?
They did not.
Okay,
I
that's what
see
I'm
what you're
getting at,
saying.
yeah. They
So-
did not, so if we take like the 4.5 and then the 3% of the police, make that into like a 7.5% increase for the fire, that way you'd be, both departments would have been increased
Equally.
incrementally the same.
Correct. And so I guess if which is, although that means then that we're saying that the police department and fire department were in the same sort of situation, right? But if that's the desire, then we have the option of taking everyone's pay and increasing it 7.5%, or figuring out how to increase their pay by 7.5%, but adjust the scale. Which would mean some people are not getting 7.5% raises, and some people are probably getting twice that. Or depending on what that scale is, right? So it's not like we're just taking their current salaries and adjusting it 7.5%. That's easy, right? We could calculate that. I mean, give me an hour and I'll tell you exactly how much every single person is going to make. So that's kind of the question. If we're going to take it and just increase everyone's pay by X%, do we just give it to them as a flat fee and say, hey, we're not doing the salary scale changes that you wanted? So they have two requests. One is more money and two is, well, they have 6 requests. One of their requests has two components. One is they want more money and then also change the scale so people max out quicker and they top out after a shorter period of time, which is comparable to what police did for their higher level ranks, or anything but start.
So one thing that I've noticed is that there are 13 firefighters who are below 40,000. But for police, we've got everybody above 40,000. So my question would be, wouldn't we want to get them, the firefighters, at least above 40,000 to start there?
Maybe. So I mean that goes into the what the priority, how you want to funnel money into that department or into those folks. The current pay scale that we have, and one of their discussion points is they weren't as interested. I guess you're one good answer. I'm monopolizing too much of the time. One good thing is if you were having difficulty at the entry level position, then you need to focus your money more there. If you're having problems with your 3 to 7 year people because now they're trained, they're experienced, and now they're looking elsewhere, then maybe that's where you want to make sure that you're giving the incentives. If you have a list 10 miles long at starting positions, people wanting that job at its current salary, but you have people here for 10 years and then they're leaving and getting out of Dodge, then those are the things that you consider when you're putting together a compensation package. Steve, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, supply demand is the deal. If you're having trouble hiring folks in the police department, you boost it above 40,000. If you're not having trouble hiring firefighters at 40,000, and you don't boost it. So it's just supply and demand is really what the overriding thing. But then if you're talking about retention and stuff like that, you know more best how to make all this work, and so I'm inclined to kind of go with whatever you think's reasonable and fair and all that. So
I don't know that I have an answer. One thing we could do is, so if I were to, I have had conversations with both firefighters and police sort of representatives. And in each of those cases, I've talked to them and I'm like, why are you guys supporting this scale? This particular scale gives a lot of, it's very top heavy.
Top heavy, yeah.
And it would seem, since there's more people at the lower ranks and not at the top ranks, keep saying funneling, if you're giving money there, why is it so top heavy with that? How is this happening? And both, and these are sometimes people at the lower ranks and medium ranks, and I'm not sure if it's just because the old hats in these organizations are more influential and the new people don't want to rile the top, or how that works. I'm just making stuff up. I have no inside knowledge of that. Or if what they're trying to do is say, no, we want a career. We're not necessarily so focused on your year one people, because we're gonna get year one people. But they're like, we want a career, and we wanna be here for a while, and we want families, and we wanna stay with the city, and we want these things, so we're willing to kind of sacrifice when we're younger, knowing that I can move up in ranks and be here for a period of time and make a good living.
Well, that's what we want too, yeah.
And that seems to be what they're saying they want as well. So we could do. I don't have a good answer for this. The best answer would be give me another month. Let the council tell me how much money you think would be an appropriate amount to go into the firefighters, and then sit down with them and the fire chief to build a scale that targets what y'all are wanting, what the chief is wanting and thinks works for the department, and what the firefighters want in terms of how that goes. An easy temporary solution could be, here's X dollars per person, or here's X percent per person, and we'll look at the salary adjustment next year. The problem with that is it's hard to adjust the pay scale when we don't know how much money we're gonna have available at that time.
Right. So we went ahead and just went with what the police is asking for, and did go with the 7.5% for the fire, and then let you work it out.
But I'd be willing to bet, and I sit here and think, I bet if y'all gave a number, how much money you think would be an appropriate amount to accomplish the city's needs and desires, I'd be willing to bet that I could get with them and they could come up with something that works for them in those terms.
Now, how much extra was the overhead again over what was that percent?
The what?
For
65%.
6.5, not 6 point.
65.
65%.
It's salary plus 65%.
So, yeah, so that, wow. So that, just that 432 comes out to over 700.
With what?
Well, looking at this, their projected increase.
What are you looking at?
At his proposal, page 19. Sorry, fire authority, page 19. If I'm reading that right, that they're projecting 432,000 more in here than was from last year. Is that?
Yeah.
And that's just for salaries. That doesn't count.
That's
That is 65%. So.
Well,
Pardon me.
let me make sure I'm following. Say that again.
Well,
So
you're
I'm
out of
looking
the
at
room.
page 19.
You were out of the room.
Okay.
And she was telling us that there was a 65% extra added onto this for
For
benefits.
benefits, all that.
I think that might be for a new officer. So when you look at things, what's that?
In general.
In general?
Yes.
What's a
It's an average.
65%?
Pension,
Is the,
all
is
the
the,
other costs.
is the,
Well, we get some from
is
the
the
state.
total
that's a lot.
personnel?
You're looking, yeah, but so a full-time employee gets health benefits. The health benefits don't cost more if they make more money.
Right.
So that's a fixed number.
Okay.
Your LOP fee, which is their retirement system, we pay 24.5%. Yay, that sounds smart. We pay 24.5% of their net wages for that. So that might be what else do we have in fire that is a scalable benefit? Longevity we've already increased. That's flat and doesn't increase based on salary.
I'm a little less scared now.
Your
Social security tax?
I don't think do they pay social security?
Yeah.
The fire?
And the city matches dollar for dollar.
The police department.
To social security?
Yeah, FICA.
Medicare.
0.0185, I believe. is what
No,
the
our
employee
social
pays.
security expense is $3,000.
Sorry,
Because
I
the
was thinking
uniform
wrong.
are exempt because they're
Yeah.
lot fee.
A uniform.
So and we pay 24.5%. So there you go. 20
That's a much better number.
25%. I don't know if Medicare expense is scalable, but that's 40,000 a year. So even if you're increasing, yeah, you're looking at 25, 26% in benefits
That's a much better.
on top of salary increases for any salary increase you get.
No, it was around 540.
Is that the same for police?
Yeah, lot fee is the same.
Okay.
will get it, okay,
What's that?
it's okay.
You were looking at the total
Yes,
benefits?
because it is always the same amount, year after year, on average. But
So like the medical stipend is for paramedics, volunteers, holiday pay doesn't go up, uniform allowance, education, longevity certificate, overtime. Overtime would go up by a certain amount. Health insurance doesn't. Your lot fee expense does. That'd go up 25%.
we just had to build this 1 month, but I'm just afraid that that will be.
I feel like we have a lot of unanswered questions that I don't, as a council, that we would not be able to have answered tonight. It's just, there's just so many variables here, so.
Well, and I think what throws me is the scale. That's what's got me kind of.
It's a scale change. It's the police did a similar thing a few years back. They didn't do that and combine it with that big of a jump, and so it didn't look as drastic. Sorry.
A weird procedural question. Does the council pass on the scale itself, or is the council just looking at line items?
For the budget, they're just voting that number.
Okay. And the firefighters are giving you a new scale, which is gonna in turn, or they're proposing, excuse me, a new scale that would in turn equals a certain higher line item.
It does, but it also then functionally affects their back end as well, right? So their step that they're on, their grade. So you're not voting on a pay scale. They're voting on the salary amount.
That's kind of, there are multiple steps to this, and that's why it's kind of confusing.
So that's why what the council could do is any number of things. You could say nothing. You could say I'm giving each individual person a different amount. Just pluck it from there. You could give me a flat percentage rate. You give me a flat dollar amount. You can just approve this. You can approve more than this. If you give me a flat dollar amount and say this is the amount in salaries that we are willing to increase, I can sit down with the firefighters and the fire chief and say, this is the number. Now, how do you guys want to do it? Like, how do you think it best fits it? And I do think, and I'll reiterate, I think they should have something, and I think we should increase, I think we should grant the police's request as well.
So if we went with the 7.5.
But the police's request is for 73, and if you combine it with the mid-year one is for 273. The fire department's is for 432. So we can do a percentage increase, but that just turns into a dollar amount.
Right.
We can do a dollar amount. You could take the same amount or say more or less than the police roughly got, and I guarantee you if I go to them and say we've got a raise and it's not quite what you wanted, but it's a heck of a lot better than you had. Now help us figure out how you guys think this should fit. And that's when I say firefighters, I'm not talking about one or two people. I'm talking about them as a whole, kind of agreeing roughly, to the extent the council always agrees. Them roughly agreeing with the way it should be. And I think that's better than me just coming in and saying, hey, let's give them each an X dollar raise, because that also frustrates part of the bigger picture, which is how their career arc is going.
So if we could just say, hey, let's go with that 7.5%, that way they'd be matched with what the police have got.
And your argument with that was, then it makes, it sounds like the police and the fire are on the same, have the same, but, when Chief Buford says, my people said, why aren't you fighting for me to get the same amount that the police department got, or we're gonna leave? They're saying that themselves. We're not saying that, they're saying that.
Yeah.
And so then we do give them the same amount.
And so they do, if they want the same thing that the police got, then the 7.5% is the way to go. That was his argument, it's not ours.
So if we were to take the 7.5% on salaries.
8% of what the 2023 or the 2023 amended option of 24-25. You add in 8% and like 25% over that was like 242,000. So if we
We could take the different, we could take the police, approve what they're asking for, figure out the exact dollar amount that went to the budget, or the percentage of raise, and just put that in to fire.
Which sounds fair to me.
Yeah.
And that number comes to roughly the number that RJ is saying.
And then you go back to them with that amount and say,
When you have the spreadsheet and want to sit there and go, okay, now how much police didn't want a huge jump between their maxed out their maxed out officer and a sergeant. Fire said, no, when you're making this jump from here to there, your responsibilities go way up. And so we want the compensation to jump bigger. So how they come up with that with a different number without breaking it, right? Because you've got to have all the variables there to make that scale. So what I'm hearing is take that percentage that the police went up over the course of their mid-year 23 and their mid-year 24, and and their start of 24,
Yeah.
mid-year 23, the amount they've got since January 1.
Are you telegraphing?
Stop.
If we're in trouble if we're coming for a mid-year fire budget resolution for increase of salaries, if we give them something. All right, we can do that and just build that in, and get with them and come up with a comparable.
What they're happy with, yeah. So what is the long-term plan? Is there any for that training facility? That'd be a
So,
joint.
here was the original plan. The original plan was to cut, so I don't think I understood the scale. They've got it planned. They're going to be making a presentation here soon between police and fire with what they're looking at. There's been so many variables, including where to put the thing, how it's going to be, what is all there. I asked for a quote and finally got one. I don't even remember. I think Chief Buford said, you don't want me to tell you the quote because I don't want to tell it to you, and we're looking at other options. And so I think they got to where they thought they were going to be, and then got a quote, and we're like, whoa, where's restrapping? So I had thought it was an amount that could be in just a general fund purchase, maybe $1.5 million or something like that, on land that city owns. Looks like it'll be 2 or 3 times that to get some of the things that they're looking for here locally that has the training facilities, a range. We've looked at indoor shooting ranges versus outdoor. There are still so many variables up there.
Both police and fire would be using this, right? Because he mentioned a classroom that the police would be using as well.
Yes, it was going to have, yes. And so, you're absolutely right. But it has changed forms so often as they're working through it and trying to budget it and go from concept to reality that it's changing. But it's, as designed, they were looking at a shooting range, a building where you could have classrooms and trainings, like sit-down trainings, where we could do our police and fire testing, and kind of deck that out so when you're doing testing for police and fire, it's not at the community center or weird locations like that. You get to go into a place that's branded police and fire, so to speak. And the cool factor hits hard for recruits for police and fire because it's a cool job. So you're cool. It's called the cool factor. You have a big cool factor that helps in recruiting.
All little boys.
It's and girls. And then a burn bunker and burn building where they can go in and set fires. And there's been discussion about then police also being able to use that for breaching training, like so practicing kicking open doors and going in like that. So to answer your question, I originally thought when we were talking about the scope that it would be a general fund sort of purchase. It was starting to look like a bigger purchase. It was going to look like we were going to be running, or I was going to be proposing bonds for some of that stuff. And so then when we were looking at a number of things, and I'm not doing that at this time, I don't know. I'm anxious and excited to see what the proposal is and the costs myself.
Well, the reason I'm asking this is I was working with, the city attorney and the sister earlier is we have a lot of money in the general fund. 3.1 million of that came from the bonds that we just retired. That was like 2.5 for, I can't remember the technical term, but pretty much the escrow fund for emergency for the city we had to buy originally, so in case we couldn't pay, plus we overpaid about 500 grand. So I was originally gonna put a resolution up to, since that was taxpayers' money that they paid specifically to pay off bond debt, I was gonna, introduce a resolution to pay off the, what do you call it?
The balance of
The
the fund.
2019 bonds on
The
franchise.
franchise fee bonds, because I was looking to the future, all this stuff we're needing, we start increasing people, we start adding salaries, that's increasing the amount of operational money we need, not capital. And unlike other bonds paying off, that would increase us by $500,000 a year. But, once I'm hearing all this, it's like we've got a lot of large expenses, so, I was gonna bring that up as a must, because that was, again, taxpayer money that they voted to pay for bond debt. However, I'm also a numbers guy, and that's at about 2%, plus or
Coupon's
minus.
around 2%.
We'd have to look.
It's cheap
We
money.
can't get bond money now. So, that's why I'm interested in all this, because I like to get some, while we have money in that, especially money that was already allocated to pay debt, find out what some of these are gonna cost, wrap that into the capital fund for when this happens. So we'd end up slowly attriting that money away, and then we have, oh wow, we've got a training facility, we have another fire station, we have fire truck, we have this, and whatever, because we have an aging infrastructure, there's gonna be other large expenses. And then we turn on and take a rather large, bond debt, because we're already, in the highway bond, we're probably, about 4 or 5 years ahead of timeline already?
Yes.
So, they're gonna be paid off, sooner than, so that will give us some of that, but I do, before we start on, I was gonna introduce something to put that on, pay those bonds. I don't think that is the best use of the taxpayers' money, but I do think it needs to be contained, maybe not the existing bond, but hey, we got stuff coming up in the next 5 years, so we should be able to set that aside, if that makes sense.
Of course, we still also need to try to decide what we're gonna do on the personnel requests. Chief Pickard wanting 1 extra police officer, and Chief Buford wanting 3 extra firefighters. That's what we want to consider or not.
Well, you had built 2 into the budget already, right?
So we gave 2 for the start of 2023, and we built into the budget already 3 for 2024.
Police or fire?
For police.
Oh, okay.
So that means over the course of 1 year, 5 additional police officers. Chief Pickard actually was requesting 6. We got the number down to a request of 4, and then I built in 3. Which still puts us at 5 police officers more than there was a year ago. 5 positions more than there was a year ago. So, yes, and then we approved 3 police officers or 3 firefighters for 2023, and 3 more are already built into the budget for 2024. And they have 3 on the table.
Yes.
Last year was the lieutenants. This
3
year
lieutenants.
is firefighter.
Last year he said he was gonna ask for 6, 3 this year and 3 next year. This year he said he was gonna ask for 9, 6 this year and 3, did I get that right? Anyways, he's, built into the budget is 3 and he wanted 3 more.
Yes,
I might.
he asked for 3 firefighters, and we just have 3 in the budget.
Well, he's asking for 3 more, I think.
Yes, exactly, we are missing 3. Well, you have to.
Well, I say let's go with what's built in the budget.
Yeah.
I don't think any extra. Not right now. anyway.
Quite frankly, I think, my opinion, I think that adding 3 police officers with the 2 they got last year, and we're getting all these positions filled, like, let's see how they feel. So, a couple other things. memory serves, each patrol, is slated for 5, and I think they had 2, this was using it, there may have been some restructuring. 5 patrol are on each shift. And then I thought that the 2 from last year was going to add 2 floaters or SROs, or, you know, they can move around. So they've got 5 per shift. Their minimum is 3. And so that means if 2 are out or sick or vacation or something like that, they have a minimum of 3. Is their staffing, and fire talks about minimum staffing as 7, and they want to move it to 8. On each company, each pumper truck, they have 4 people on each shift. Schedule, like the billets are such that each pumper company has 4, and then I think they're at 3 for the ladder truck. But and then a battalion chief. And so that is when fully staffed, 4, 8, 11, 12 people. And so when fully staffed, if we're adding 3, that makes it, you know, you add 1 more on there to 13. One of the issues we have is we have very beneficial leave policies, and we're seeing other requests that were mentioned that would affect availability. So when you're giving more vacation time, with the fire department, we have Kelly days. So that means that just due to their work cycle, they're taking off a day per se. It's almost like you're scheduling in less than the billeted for that. So when we're doing other things that increase time off, you're affecting staffing levels as well. Does that make sense? So a request for more people, and this isn't the case, but if you're requesting more time off and now need more people because you have more people taking time off, those are really good benefits that, in comparison, when you're doing salary comparisons, should be compared as close to apples as can be. Anyways, I'm rambling. It's late. I think my take was, I think 3 is good for the police department. They've been so short-staffed. I don't know if they know what they need anymore. I joke, but I don't know that they know what it's like to be fully staffed with the number of officers they have, especially when you throw 3 more on. I say let's let them get those positions filled and see what life is like. If there's we've shown that if we think there's an emergency, we will make changes mid-year. For the fire department, you guys make that. I don't have as much firsthand knowledge about whether those extra 3 make the world of difference. I know that they were requesting it.
I know last year we were debating on whether we should do the 3 firefighters or 3 lieutenants, and then when that tornado came through, it was sure handy that we had the lieutenants there. When all of a sudden all the neighboring cities started asking for help. So
Wasn't there something too, and I may be wrong here, about the number that they have, whether they can go into a home? They need so many to be able to.
right.
3 on truck, I think.
They had to have 3 on a truck, and so there are cases where they haven't been able to go in and have had to wait.
I don't know that was the case. I know that they talk about
That could happen.
it could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Just like ISO ratings can affect your insurance. It's true.
Yeah.
So what if we go ahead and stand pat with the police, as you suggest, but then consider adding the 3 firefighters?
Do what?
What if we just stand pat with the police as it is in the budget?
So give the
already?
fire department. So my question would kind of be, that's 9 firefighters over the course of two years, right?
My
You got-
suggestion is just to stay with what you've
Yeah,
built
you
in
got
the
3
budget.
in here, that's
You
what.
got 3 in
But I
it.
think what Councilmember Tierney is asking is, what if we go with what the fire department is asking?
Right.
Which is asking 3 more than what you've already budgeted.
Which is asking for 6 new
Right,
firefighters.
no, I don't know. Let's just go with what we've budgeted.
I'm good with whatever. First of all, I want to preface this by, isn't it nice when we're in budget meetings and we're like, we're not in those dire cut moments, because we've been through budgets where we went in and change people's line items from $100 down to 80 for books. And so this is a good place to be in. I think that we are showing tremendous support in police and fire with 3 to each plus compensation packages.
Plus the longevity, plus the
Plus
increase in
longevity.
lawfee.
I think slow and steady wins here
I do too.
with doing 3. I mean, I know Chief has talked, or Chief Buford talked last year about, you know, a new fire station and what that would do for staffing. So we're going to rotate crews around, and rather than giving 6 at this point, just slow and steady, because we're not there yet. We're not building a new fire station just yet.
Right.
So I like having the 3, and then we can look at it again next year.
Mhm.
And
It's true.
I want to say something about the fire station. We don't think we're going to need it in the next couple of years. But if we're going to have a bond election for anything in the next couple of years, then something that's maybe 5 or 6 years out, you really want to include it at that time, because you're going to use the bonds and lock that money in such that you can't do bonds. So there's been more talk about the fire station as we've been looking or thinking that we might have to, you know, as the bonds expired previously and we let them expire and that millage rate expire off and taxes go down. And so in that, when we're looking at that window of do we need that fire station, it kind of gets pushed more forward in the timeline, because if we're going to have other bond elections, you don't want to forget that one, because it's kind of hovering just outside of the next couple years thing. So whether it's 4 or 5 years or something like that, if we're not going to have a bond election in the next couple years, then that it doesn't become as urgent, so to speak.
Well, in 2024, he says he will request 6 additional firefighters. That's for next year. In 2025, he wants to request 3 to 6 more firefighters. He's, in 2026, he wants to build the fire station. So,
subject to council approval.
I think that, yeah, that's his vision. But I really feel like, you know, he's gonna be requesting 6 more next year, so 3 now is fine.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, keep the 3 new police officers, keep 3 new firefighters, give the police the pay raise that they're wanting, take that amount that the police are getting for this raise and the one they got in the middle of this year, and then sit down with fire personnel to discuss the best pay scale that accomplishes that.
I vote yes.
Okay.
Sounds good.
One other thing I wanted to bring up, and then we'll discuss whether there's a lot to talk about or whether we're having another meeting. For a period of time, there has been discussions about an indoor pool at the senior center. There has often been discussions about how that affects the city's budget. Like, even if we have the capital, how do we want to spend? Like, we can't afford the ongoing operational costs. There was a pro forma done in 2000. Steve, you were there with me. Bond Task Force Committee. It was a pro forma that was not. It was. I want to say it was Mayor Watson putting pen to paper and calculating how many lifeguards they would have and what they thought those costs would be. But it came to around about $500,000, I think, was the number. But they didn't. There is an option to hire somebody to actually do a study that is in the business of running pools to determine once and for all what the actual impact to the city's operational budget would be.
When you talk pool, are you talking a waiting?
Well, you can do it. You can.
Or a
Laying pool.
laying.
Well, you can do it however, but a while back, Councilmember Tierney kept asking if we could figure out what we thought the operational costs were. And we'd look at a bunch of different numbers, and we really don't have a good idea to determine whether it would be a drain on the city's coffers. Some places seem to have it make money, and those places exist. But so.
Money. If you look at Russellville, well, they have a lot of tax there. Russellville built the last one in 2017. That's just a generic 8-lane your minimum that you would have for your size pool. That in itself is 6.5 mil. If you look at the one that the Big Mac daddy of all, Benton, that was 13 mil, to put that whole thing together.
We're not talking about the capital costs, we're talking about operational and a
If
needs
you look at
assessment.
operational costs, if you look at North Little Rock for a pool, if you look for Bryant, if you look for Benton, even after they rent out a lot of their part, even to sports teams to come in, you're looking around 250 to 300,000, and that's including all the memberships out of pocket. I'm not seeing any that's not maybe extremely subsidized.
So we've also talked about multiple different types of pools, and my thoughts on pools are pretty known, but Councilmember Tierney has asked for it, and let me just get through this. We've talked about the pool that would be at a general pool with open to the public, and then there's been discussion about a pool at the senior center.
But that would only allow seniors to use it, right?
That is what would be preferred. Members of the senior center that paid that membership would be able to use it, but it would be a different size pool, right? Different purpose pool, these sort of things. Anyways, long story short, if the council wants, we can get an aquatic study agreement that comes in and does a needs analysis, develop a program and conceptual, does an operational cost analysis, including public meetings, site visits, and the like, for $16,500.
I think that would be money well spent, because we've had a lot of people in the city who feel like they got shortchanged when it was on a bond issue, then it was dropped out, when they came time to decide what all that bond money
Well, there's a
would
lot of
be used
people.
on. So, I know that it's just something I hear all the time, but that's something people want. So just, looking at it to see what our options are, I think would,
Well, we
make a
would
lot of
have
people
some
happy.
information to give them too, because,
So that's-
yes, and would put it to rest.
That would give us a number certain by somebody who, because we're also not talking about those sorts of pools if it's at the senior center.
Right,
You're talking about something different.
It would also limit the amount of citizens.
It would also limit the amount of, and there's pros and cons, but here's what does frustrate me, is when people come say it and we're like, well, even if we could afford it, or even if we could put it on the bond and every person in Maumelle vote, 100% of the people voted for it, we can't afford it. We can't afford it unless there was even a proposed tax that people would pay for. The reality is we don't have good numbers, right? We don't have something concrete. This is an issue that continues to pop up over and over and over and over again. And if it is something that could work, or it is something that can't work, at least I'd have something to point to and say, we've looked into it, we brought in independent people, this is what they've said, it would cost X dollars per year, how do you propose we pay for that? And who knows, maybe then people are like, we don't want another playground next. I don't know what the case, that's operational, or capital versus operational. But it would give us something to point to. One big downside to this, getting that information, is the moment that we go forward with a study, I'm seeing some smiles, that says that we're looking at it, it's back, and there will be people who swear up and down that tonight we voted to put a pool in. I'm telling you that's how it will work, because I've had people tell me what happened at meetings that I was at, and they know because they talked to somebody who was there and heard from somebody, and so, that said, Councilmember Tierney, that's the route.
Thank you for bringing that up.
There you go.
Another couple of little things on the whole thing with the senior center is they've already got the utility stubs in place for the pool. 'Cause, when they were building the senior center, they were thinking they were going to put in a pool there.
No. That is not, that was not the
But they have the
case.
utilities there.
That was not the case when it was presented to the Bond Task Force Committee in 2013. I sat on that committee and was a council member. I was also not, I was involved in every meeting that people were jeering and booing. There was absolutely, the pool was a different issue at that time. The pool was supported by two main groups of people. One, your swimmers, and then to your like pool aerobics folks, and so like your swim team people, and then like your there was a large group of seniors that use the pool.
But the steps are there, though, utility.
Correct. But
That was my point.
you are absolutely correct. The narrative, though, is important. The pool was never voted on at the ballot. The pool was not even proposed at the meetings where discussions of the senior center were being discussed as a bond issue. The pool did not come up until after it was voted on, and then during design process, some of the folks who were unhappy that the pool were kind of lobbied, and they're like, well, we can see if we can make it work. We don't think it will, but it's marginally more. So there was, and that's important because there was never any council action. There was never any vote on the ballot. There was never any promises put on that the pool would be there. All of that is there is because there are people who genuinely believe that. But you are absolutely right. When they designed it, it is such that a pool could be built on at some other time.
A lot of the expenses are already taken care of on that, yeah. So,
Yes.
another thing I wanted to kind of bring up too was, we are an aging society here in Maumelle. I mean, we're not, the 18 and 20 crowd. And,
You're older now.
Median age
When
is
you
going
got
up.
here, Terry.
And,
That's fair.
swimming is the absolute best physical therapy. I mean, I've had a lot of different vehicle wrecks. I mean, I've been hit by a drunk driver who's doing 130. I had a tree fall on me. I didn't hit the tree hit me. Broken bones, sternum, broken vertebrae in my neck, all sorts of stuff. And I've had a physical therapist tell me he's never seen anybody with my kind of level of injuries that was, not on permanent disability. But I'll swim every day throughout the summer. And I feel really great by the end of the summer. Then the winter comes and I've got no swimming options. And I'm just in agony by the time the spring comes around.
Could we
So
do
I
this?
hear so many other people tell me similar things about how, they really need for physical therapy. So, it's something that, really is good for people with injuries or as you age. It's the best, non-impact kind of exercise a person can do.
Well, could we do this study, a pool at the senior center versus covering the one we already have? And making it somewhat a year-round type situation?
Seems
like that would be
we
cheaper.
could do a study for anything. This was looked at and sort of spurred from Nicole when I was asking her to try and figure out what the cost would be. That came up, I want to say, during the discussions of the indoor pool back in 12 and 13. And the
I was
engineers were
here.
saying like, that is not what you want to do. What's that?
I remember,
They said that's what you don't wanna do?
Yeah.
it
I
was
don't know
more
why.
old school. We mailed out mailers of all the capital projects that were being considered.
I
So
remember
that's
that.
how the public input was recorded by old school. One, if you like this, two, so.
And what did,
It didn't make the cut. We got the, it was high. It was like one of the the sixth one, which is what Councilmember Tierney is referring to because it was almost one of the top 5. They built it with the intent to expand the center on the lake to the left. My direction is kind of backwards, so to the left, but they did consider that because of the mailer and a response from the mailer.
I remember that.
I'm just throwing stuff out. So just keep in mind, when you said we're an aging population, the median age in Maumelle is 39.8, and 14.7% of the population is 65 and older.
How much?
That's what I was gonna bring up, is that it's been at that level for the past few years, about just under 40 is the median age. So it's actually younger than it used to be several years ago.
I think if you look at the census, you're not gonna see that. I think you're gonna see it's going up.
No, so this is from the 2020 I pulled up my State of the City report as soon as you said that, because I was like, I can't remember that. The median age as of the 2020 census, we got these numbers in 22. The median age was 39.8%, or 39.8. The median, or 14.7% of the population is 65 and older, which is 2.7% lower than the state average. So we have a lower senior population. And all of this. That was me just
assisted living centers built.
We're gonna continue to have
and
this
that
discussion
shows will go up. So
all the time unless we actually know what the numbers look like.
I agree, and
That's,
Like
that's
Mr.
kind of
Shin
what
said,
I'm
this'll-
thinking.
this'll
Building
put
it,
to
that's
rest.
that's a question for a later day, but we won't know if we wanna build it until we do something like
I
that.
agree, and I agree, it's money
I would-
well spent, this is
It'll make it,
past due.
I've been one of the ones that said, like, I would support one if I knew what it was going to cost.
Right,
I don't know what it's gonna cost, so,
yes.
and then we can move on to something else.
So this is, add 16.5 in for the aquatic study.
Yes.
I'm gonna vote no.
I was pretty sure you're gonna find something to vote no on.
No.
But I'll state on the budget meeting record that I'm not voting for a pool, but I'm voting for a study.
Study.
The study, yeah. And it
Yeah, I
may-
am curious
to-
what it would cost,
to
but
put an answer to it
Yeah,
in part of the debate.
yes,
They start a
please,
new one.
please,
You know what?
Miss
Every
Hugh,
now and then I
you know who.
learn something that I thought I knew, and it wasn't what I thought, and I had to rethink things. And then sometimes I proved what I thought the whole time. But it is one of those issues that pops up from the residents quite often. So, last thing I wanted to say, and then last thing I want to say, capital improvement fund is where we were trying to begin long-term planning for the fire trucks and other things. We don't have any money added in the budget this year, but my request is to go ahead. We were budgeting $60,000 a year for each of the 3 fire trucks to sort of normalize that over time, and I'd like to get back to doing that again, which would be 180 operating transfer out of the general fund and into the capital improvement fund. For those that haven't been around, the theory was the fire department has to buy a truck. They buy their engines on average 10-ish years, and they buy their ladder truck on average every 20 years. In some years we have like a limited capital that we're trying to spend, and if the fire department needs their truck, the police doesn't get their cars. And they take a big sort of hit, and the city takes a big hit because we've got this one big capital purchase for $600,000, $700,000. The idea was to take 10% of a truck that's supposed to last 10 years and just start paying in advance, almost like you make payments, but we're not paying interest. We're banking it and getting it out of the general fund and into a fund so that when the fire department asks for a truck, it doesn't hit the budget the same way that it does. So 180 is what I'm asking, and we'll continue that on.
That's a good idea.
why did we started that, and I agree with it, completely agree with it. We had to clean it out, because was that when we're going through the whole budget issue of transferring money?
No, we bought a truck from it, and then there's
Oh,
still
okay, I thought we just didn't put money into it.
there's still
after.
there's
Okay.
still $200,000 in
Okay.
Yes, I saw that what you are saying because it was bought something and then for some reason it was a operational transfer. So there is that store there.
Yeah, that was it, we just
200.
stopped doing it because
I credit you.
budget, okay.
Chief Buford was saying he wanted to get on order a truck, it takes like 7 years to fulfill. That's kind of a combination ladder and pump truck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I also request we put the 3.1 mil in there for earmark it for either the fire trainer setting or to offset the next fire, since that money was bond money.
Bond money.
It was bond money.
So you wanna, and that's not.
That's a big.
Hey, I hate when people have like
I started
an idea that sounds really good, but that I haven't thought of yet. So you're talking about rolling the 3.1 million. The 3.1 million was the overages we got from the bonds,
Correct.
and just automatically
Correct.
earmarking it for a police and fire training facility.
Correct.
And rolling
And
it
or
in.
the fire, whatever we decide to get first, either that or the fire station.
yeah, whatever comes first.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm sure it'll be the training center.
Yeah, I think okay. That's not a bad idea. It gets out of general fund. It sort of pledges the commitment to those sort of things.
Mike Hogan was also asking to order a couple of trash trucks too.
That's in the budget and.
We already
the-
have something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay, both of them.
Can you say that again? Somebody else had a good idea that you didn't think of?
Yeah, people have good ideas that I didn't think of all the time. It's just not normally like right before you're about to pull the trigger or something.
We've had some last minute decisions in these
Every
meetings
purpose.
before.
Yeah.
That's how we bought, that's how, we had a last minute, 2-second decision that got us a third fire company once. We bought a fire truck, got the truck in and like, oh, the old one was driven by volunteers, we don't want volunteers to drive, we need to hire people. And you're like, okay, that makes sense. And then they're like, but they can't drive alone, you need another person. We're like, well, that makes sense too. And they're like, well, now we have 2 people and they can't do anything without a third one. And then they're like, you know what, I think we have a new fire company. And that was in a budget meeting like this where someone was like, can we earmark some of this money for that truck they're needing? And it was like, ding. Fun fact. 3.1 million, I think, is a great idea to okay, now, here's what, I'm done with anything I need to talk about. That was on my list of stuff that people wanted to talk about or that I heard. It's 9 o'clock. If there are things that you guys want to talk about, we have 2 options. One is to hold another meeting on Thursday, or continue on. Does
I do
anyone
not
have
want to
things that they really,
continue on.
what's that?
I would rather have another meeting on Thursday than.
Oh, do we have
Well, what if, well, that's,
We're
not
already
if there's
here.
one
What else
person
is there
that-
to discuss?
Well, I
Well,
wanna
mean, if
open
we're
the,
done.
that's what I'm opening the floor for. Is there anything else?
As far as the budget, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
What I can do for next meeting, if you agree.
Well, hey, whoa.
Don't start.
Hold on.
I mean, if we're
We're
done.
trying to
we're
get out of
done,
another
but
meeting.
I-
We're trying to get out.
No,
I don't wanna have
just to
another one.
bring another one.
But we might not need another meeting. So if there's not more stuff that needs to be talked about, we can take these, input these in, and then, I really don't wanna drive to everyone's house and deliver. Do you have your act for?
No,
Okay.
I was gonna ask about
Yeah.
that. Did you put it on the?
No.
Okay, then, wait.
No,
I just didn't look.
No, it's not there. Yeah, see?
Oh, it's not there, okay.
I've got it here. Anyways, I'd really rather not drive to everyone's house to deliver the budget book. We can email it to you. And I bet we can have it by Friday.
There is no more changes, and just
Well,
what
just
we
the-
talk
just-
about, I can't do it because it takes me some time.
And then that'll still be a draft. There might still be, we like to get it looking really nice, make sure every border has its proper walls and cells and stuff. We can get you the form that will be, in the council packet. Wait, the council packet goes out on Thursday.
Yep.
So we'll have it Thursday. Can we get it Thursday?
No, but I don't have the numbers for
Why does
fire
it go out on
department.
Here's a waiver for everything.
This is, I don't have the changes.
Let it come out.
But that should, I can get that, cause I'll
Well-
call, but I can get that to you.
Late
Fire and
submissions.
police, I need
Okay.
the right numbers for.
No, it's supposed to come out Thursday.
Right.
Oh.
But we were
I was like, it never comes out.
But I'm also working on the closing for
Friday
November.
Friday afternoon, late.
We will, I can get it to you electronic copy before the weekend.
PDF's
Kitty
fine,
clerk,
yeah.
'cause I'm up here sometimes on Fridays, but I'm down there.
Can you
Okay.
walk the email over to my house?
Oh, no.
They just gave
Okay.
me the stuff.
Okay. If there's nothing further.
We're done?
Then we'll see you Monday.
Thursday?
Monday.
Just kidding, make sure you
Monday.
guys are still awake.
Yeah, we are still recording.
Oh,
I'll go-
Terry over here trying to like, let's come back Thursday. I'm done.
If we were
She likes
not
the good
done,
dinner.
I didn't wanna be here another second.
She just does it for the dinner, that's all.
That was an amazing idea.
Yeah, she ate so much
I
tonight.
love that.
It's the garlic knots. Did it for the garlic knots.
So much.
We got a much more thoughtful council than we had when I first got on. We just, we was
Well, apparently
Then I
I
can
can
flying by
issue
the
how
seat
it
of their
is
pants.
built.
Caleb and I got on there.
I'm waiting
I
till
can
it stops
keep-
recording.
I am
You good?
tired.